We're gonna thank you all for coming. 6 o'clock on October 25th. We're gonna do a Pledge of Allegiance first. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Okay. So 6 o'clock, we still have a discussion for potential zoning bylaw for firearm, sighting of firearms in the town of Littleton. Again, as we did on the last meeting, if people don't feel comfortable about giving their last name, they only have to give us their first name and that they're a resident of the town of Littleton. We're going to use a little decorum, come up and speak at the microphone. First off, we're going to open it up to the board. We have some board business issues with this to deal with, and then we'll open up to the general public. So we have a proposed a draft of a firearms business bylaw done through Marin. Anna, most of the board had input into it, brought it to town council. It's come back, and we've got a few corrections we want to talk about. So I think we're going to discuss the details, a little bit of the details for everyone. And once we get done with that, then we'll open it up to the public for everyone who wants to speak on it. So starting with this that we've got, that everyone has seen, I guess some of the key issues we need to talk about is placing, where you want to place them. Do we want to do it by zoning, whereas they're only allowed in certain districts? Do we want to do it by distance from themselves and distance from schools and churches and other institutions that we deem not favorable to have a firearms dealer next to? Or we want to, Marin's put up the map of the different zoning areas. So why don't we start there? I think that's probably the most important piece that we have to discuss how we want to regulate where they go in the town of Littleton. Board have any thoughts on it?
Well, I'll
go ahead.
Since nobody else is jumping in, the text of the bylaw says offers distances from other similar businesses, distances from schools, daycare centers, places children congregate. So I would suggest that already counts out residential district and the two mixed-use districts, Village Common and King Street Common. So that leaves us with 3 districts that you might want to consider yes or no for firearms businesses. Industrial A, that's the red on the map. Industrial B, which is the green, or the remaining business district, which is the gray, the dark gray. And just to note that near Littleton Common, the lines have not yet been updated for the last couple of town meeting votes, but it's
that was my next question, because the mill is industrial B, but I thought that was
right at that was changed to King Street, to Village Common, form-based code district. That the full effect of that change is not shown on the zoning map.
So where do we want to put them, and how do we want to? Because where we put them pretty much regulates how many dealers you're going to have and how far away they're going to be from each other. If we look at the marijuana bylaw, marijuana is allowed in industrial A. Is that how we?
Well, let's see. We had a separate district for the retail, and then the other types of marijuana, the testing and the growing, and was industrial A and industrial B. I recall.
So the way that this was drafted was to be able to follow what the adult entertainment one did, which was to say, this is where we don't want it.
Right.
And if there's a place where it meets all the criteria, then it can be there. Mm-hmm. And even by what was written in that draft, there are still places where it could be. So there is still that.
So that was industrial, which one, I forget, industrial B, the bigger, the red.
Industrial A is the red.
The
Industrial,
adult,
that's where we allowed adult entertainment.
where the red is.
Where the red is.
Actually, I have the, so, I was almost there. Adult use establishments, so not allowed in residential, not allowed in village common, not allowed in business, allowed by special permit in industrial A, and not allowed in industrial B.
So A is the red.
A is the red, by special permit in industrial A. That's how we did that one.
Yeah. So if the town adopts a firearms businesses bylaw, we'd add another use, probably right under adult use establishments, that would be firearms businesses. And I think the discussion now is about which districts to allow, not, or Anna's approach to only go by the distances from other uses. Or, I didn't say that well, but.
Well, I have a question about the industrial A, if we're going to consider districts. So, because this is considered a retail service, right? 1A has a footnote that says, except P, if there is more than 50,000 square feet gross floor area in other non-residential uses on the lot or within 2,000 feet of the boundary of the lot, and the use is contained in a structure chiefly devoted to other permitted uses, and the use occupies not more than 10% of the structure's floor area. So it seems,
Well, I'll go back to the first part of your statement. Firearms businesses would be defined as a separate use, not a retail.
okay, so so inherently, we'll have a new line on here, and it will, okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
But even if we kept them in Zone A, they still would have to be 1,000 feet from one another, right? We can
Correct.
have- Okay.
And everything else. the
Right,
charts and
right,
everything else.
right.
So,
Would it be possible to make a map that showed the industrial A and the 1,000-foot offset from residential areas?
Yes.
I think that would eliminate most of the industrial A.
Right, and as long as by the end of the process, we're not left with 0 places in town that it could go,
Right.
then that would not pass muster with,
Right.
yeah.
But I think I would have to see a map that showed the actual available areas with those residential offsets.
Yeah, I think the only place would be around Taylor Street.
well, you could have some down by the old Sandville,
Yeah, the quarry.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's,
Yep.
there are those buildings behind there.
Right.
This would include the Point, though it's unlikely, it would include the Point. It would include this area.
Well, would it, because you've got the climbing gym there? Is that considered someplace where minors hang out?
I don't know.
There's houses in Westford just across the line.
Yeah.
The area in the bottom, which is that area off Newtown Road that's in the back there, in the wetlands, there is residential around there. So the purpose, Bartlett, of your exercise is to determine that there would actually be some areas.
Yeah, I
Left, yeah.
doubt that if you did that 1,000-foot overlay from all residential uses, you would have any available area.
No, you would around the quarry.
I think also around the route to Taylor Street.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
how would we accomplish that?
So what I did was I just put up a little blue line there between the 2 green tags. That's just over 1,000 feet, just for scale.
That's the dimension of it.
Yeah, so if you take that length, about 1,000 feet, and just threw that up down there for scale, that's all. It's not,
See how
Oh,
that's
okay.
1,000 feet, that, see the two
Oh, the measure.
That's the
Oh, okay.
distance
In the
of what
middle.
1,000 feet is.
Yeah, so that shows you the scale of it. No, well, I'm not doing that right, but, yeah.
It's 1,200 feet.
Taylor Street.
Yeah, I can't.
So it's 1,000 feet from a residence, not the district, correct?
No, it says both, how, any residential building and any residential zone is the way it's written now.
But the 1,000 feet is written from the building.
I would think.
That's the way this is written. So,
It's from the exterior wall.
of the building, like the corner of the building to
Right.
the corner of the
That's-
building, you're
That's placing the shops. It's
Placing the what?
It's not 1,000 feet from the corner of a residential building, it's the residential zone.
Well, is that the case?
Yes.
Because we didn't do, it's not written that way for, okay.
Yeah, there's two different.
Because the 1,000 square foot distance shall be measured in a straight line from the nearest point of the structure.
Now,
to
it
the
does
nearest point of
say
the-
residential zoning district.
Yeah, there's-
Under location requirements.
Right, two different places for that. One
Okay.
is
Yeah.
A and one is E.
Okay. Well, that would be,
The nearest.
who manages our GIS? I mean, could they just do an offset command, 1,000-foot offset command on these distinct areas to see what would remain?
And that's a mapping exercise that we would have to, I would recommend we do before the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Because we have to make sure we have someplace.
Yeah.
Well, then, if you're gonna do that, then I think you need to add industrial B in front of it, because,
Why?
because if you look at that and you're trying to keep it down by where the old sandmill is, your 1,000 feet is gonna go through industrial A, through industrial B, and then there'll be residential. So, if you're gonna put it, you need the fatter part of the green part,
I think we should wait and see what results,
what the GIS shows us.
yeah.
Well,
And then if we need to add industrial B, we could
I
add.
think you have to make sure that this bylaw is functional,
Mhm.
Right.
that it works,
Yeah.
that there is places that
Yeah.
it can go.
Yep.
We can't restrict it so much that it never comes into it, and that's not the intention of this. So I think you have to think about maybe including the green, just so that there is some places that it can go. Okay, so that's how we're gonna approach that part. The next part is, what are you gonna be able to sell? That's the next big thing. What are you gonna be able to sell? You gonna be able to sell parts to guns, or do you just wanna sell firearms? I think the parts is the wrong word. I think the word accessories. You can buy accessories to guns, which means if you wanted to buy a scope. A scope or something like that, yes. But I think a lot of people have voiced concern. We've gotten tons of letters from you, and I want to thank you for sending everything to us. We can't list them all here, but we've gotten a bunch, and we will put them on when we get the website finished for this town, for the meeting we're going to have on the 10th of November. 10th of November? That we're actually going to propose this bylaw. That will all be available for everyone to read, what everyone has said. The biggest concern has been the ability to go into a gun shop, a gun dealership, and be able to buy parts to make guns more than what they're supposed to be. So do we want to restrict parts? That you can buy accessories to guns, being scopes and shoulder harnesses or whatever, stands, if you want to put it on the stand, but not parts to modify. Parts to modify, is that a good way of putting it?
It's tough because the definition of a firearm accessory is any device designed, modified, or adapted to be inserted into or affixed onto any firearm to enable, alter, or improve the functioning or capabilities of the firearm, which might mean scopes and it's separate, but it could also mean like actual parts that we don't want to have. I do not know what the applicable state laws are. I know we refer to them.
Well, right now, it's in our draft that it would, firearm accessories would fall under.
Well, yeah, but that, an accessory could be a bump stock or something.
Right.
And those, as far as I know, may be actually illegal now, I don't know.
Well, it says at the very beginning that it wouldn't supersede any state.
Yeah.
So if it's outlawed in the state, then
It should be, yeah, it won't be
It'll be
allowed here.
covered, yeah.
Okay. All right, guess we can leave it there, that way for now. The other issue, my three issues are, the last one is brick and mortar. We want establishments, retail establishments where you have hours of operation, a site plan, a safety plan, check with the fire department, the police department. Everybody checks in to make sure that it's going to be safe and suitable for people to come and buy product there. So we don't want to do people that have a internet location and are using Littleton as their drop-off of the internet location. We're all okay with that? Or do we have,
That might not solve the problem. I mean, you could get 80 guys to form a cooperative, which would be one entity, which we would allow, but it would have 80 members. And they could all do business out of that one
they
storefront
couldn't,
as a
because
co-op.
they'd be within 1,000 feet of each other. If they all have business licenses, yeah,
Well,
it's going to go
So
by
you-
the,
does that 1,000 feet apply to the license?
I would
The
think
person
so.
with the license?
You have to have licensed gun dealers, right? Isn't that how we're doing this? It's all licensed. So if 80 people have a license, they can't be within 1,000 feet of each other.
Okay, I read it, that businesses couldn't be within 1,000 feet of each other, so I have misread it.
Well, I think,
Well, then we should safeguard it and put the word license in there.
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I'm looking at.
Thank
Thank you,
Sure.
Bartlett.
I think you can't have more than one business owner with I think that's what we're trying to accomplish. We just want to make sure that that's what we ultimately do accomplish.
Okay.
So,
I get Bartlett's point, though, I mean, because you could have a business that, whose function is to be this, address drop for other people.
Like an aggregator, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah, or like a co-op.
UPS
I think a
store
co-op
or
is a good
Yeah.
example.
And,
yeah, but you can't, because once, say you own a big area, say you have a 10,000 square foot building, and you want to lease it, and you want your friends to all come in and sell their gun from there. In order for them to sell that gun from there, they have to have a license to sell it. Okay, so then that will catch you because they're within 1,000 feet of your license.
but how, I don't know if that is covered by this.
It is, because you can't have two gun dealers within 1,000 feet of each other. So how are you going to be able to co-locate?
Okay, so,
Everything throughout here refers to it as a business. It doesn't refer to it as a license.
Well, actually, I think some of this goes back to the definition of firearm business, the new definition that we're proposing. And so I'm hearing a question that we want to ask town council to make sure that this is pinned down for individual license.
Yeah.
That would solve everything if we do it that way.
so it goes back to the definition of a firearm dealer.
The firearm business on the first page.
Right, firearm business, but they have the A, firearm dealer.
It's one business equals one license, that we want to draw that connection.
We probably should read, a licensed retail or wholesale operation involving. If we put the word license in there, then everybody's license will trip it to everybody else. And rather than just put a licensed retail or wholesale operation. Meaning you can't have a space and be off of my license, and I could then you come in and you can sell your stuff, but I have the license and you're still selling. Each one has to have a license. So, okay, that would, hopefully would catch, well, like I said, we'll
Yeah, I
clean
think
it up
we
for
need, we need the
town.
attorney, yeah.
So, because another way to think of this is like a flea market, where you have one space and the individual dealers come in, and our intention, I don't know if it's reflected in this, is that not be possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's not possible now, really, the way we
Yeah.
have it, the way it is in town now. It's not. I think a lot of people have the conception that it's a flea market and you walk from, it's
Right.
not. There are individual establishments now.
Okay.
We want to keep that, you have to have a license, you have to have your own business, you have to have your own retail hours and everything else. We want to continue to keep that and make sure that, that that's all that we allow in the town of Littleton. At least that's, I think, the way I want to see this go forward. We don't want unregulated people having an address in Littleton and shipping stuff to Littleton and everywhere else from Littleton. If you're gonna be,
already regulated, you keep using the word, sorry to interrupt you. It's regulated,
Mr.
right?
Scott, when we open it up to the public, you can voice your concerns or clarify something for us. Thank you.
Well, but based on sort of expanding that, as someone explained to me that one of the problems is that because of regulations, anyone buying or selling firearms has to have a physical location, and that's one reason why all these people have piled into the
They're all
mill.
using the
Okay.
mill as their physical location.
So in some ways, we're the victim of the regulations.
I agree 100%. We're the loophole in the regulation. That's why. So that's not what we want to continue to be. Anything else? Does the board have any other questions or concerns before we open it up to the public? Are we close to sending this to town council?
I had a question when I was reading it about the line that prohibited the hiring of felons. And I don't see why, I mean, I think that restrictions on felons and making them not be able to get jobs is a big cause of recidivism, and I would like to have some way of rehabilitating people who've done time. It's just, I'm just throwing that out as a question.
Is it even appropriate for a planning board?
Well, we're putting it into our bylaw.
Well, I'm saying, is that appropriate? Maybe not.
Maybe,
Can you have certain types of felons? Like, I'm not sure I'd want somebody who had been convicted of murder to be working in a firearms, but I don't know.
I would think that the regulations that are already in place must address who can sell firearms. I would think that would be their jurisdiction.
Are you referring to
More than ours.
the administration and procedure D4, a sworn statement that neither the applicant, the manager, nor any person having any equity has been convicted of violating the provisions?
no, there's another line before
No,
that.
that talks about, I'm looking for it. No, I get what you're saying, Bartlett, where is it?
Maybe as a practical matter, we just ask that, we get the police chief to weigh in on a questionable person.
Well, but think about
Oh,
how that works.
6. It's on page 5,
I said,
yeah.
no operator or employee of
Page
a firearms
5C.
shall have been convicted of any felonies under state or federal law.
That's pretty broad.
Why don't we find out what the,
I don't know how that's,
That might have come from
a planning
Wellesley.
board can.
what?
That might have come from Wellesley.
Right, so my recommendation on this question is that you leave it in for the draft that goes to the public hearing, and then at the public hearing, you can make it less restrictive, but you can't make it more restrictive. So if then the board wants to take that part out, then you certainly can, at that point, before town meeting.
All right, let's leave it in, but let's get an answer whether if you're,
You might also want to look at the definition of felony, because
well, if you want to see what the federal government says.
Murder,
If you
rape,
get- if you're getting a
Well, it
license,
says any felony.
Yeah,
if
I
you're getting a
know.
license to carry a gun, if you need
Yeah.
to sell a gun. So why don't we let them straighten that out for us? Anything else in this?
So I made a couple of other edits, some that I sent over to town council as well, but one in particular that I wanted to raise with the board, it's more of a process question, because I think that the way that it currently reads is that we would have a pre-meeting, like an informal meeting, which is fine, but I would like to propose that we have the applicant go through their process of getting their license, their firearm business license, and so that would be one item, that they actually have it rather than being in process or anything. And then the second is that they need to, and it's already in the document, it says applicants need to submit a security, I added the word security operations and management plan to Littleton Police Department to be approved and to have their license when they come to request that informal meeting. And so that is for us to be able to have as a I guess you could say as a gate to make sure that we're not seeing 50 applicants because they all want an informal meeting, but rather they have all of their process in place. They've been already licensed before they even come before us. So that's not something that is currently a part of it, so.
I think that's a good idea.
Well, it's a special permit, so we can,
Should there be any term to the special permit?
It's in 1 year, it has to be reviewed in 1 year in here.
Yeah, I think it's annual.
Yeah, I
It is
think it
annual.
said 1 year.
Where does it say that?
I know I read it.
Towards the end.
Administration and procedure.
Yeah, it's on page 6, the bottom. Procedure and findings, A2.
Yeah, renewed annually.
also, getting back to Bartlett's point, it says all firearm businesses shall conduct criminal background checks for all employees in accordance with state law. I would assume that if you're doing a background check, if you're a felon, you can't work there anyway. Why would we be doing background checks if you've got a,
Felons can work,
then why are you doing a background check?
Well,
Criminal
just-
background check.
just,
I think it would weed
It's a
out
matter
the
of
felons who
procedure
have
and, yeah.
weapons charges.
maybe you wouldn't want somebody working for you who had stolen from you. I don't know.
This is
So-
criminal background check.
Yeah.
One other thing is the hours. What do we think? It says 9 to 5, but then it points out that each town has a different bylaw. I sort of think 9 to 5 is sort of tough.
Why is that tough?
Well-
Kind of standard business hours?
For an office, not for retail,
A lot of these people are hobbyists. They have other jobs.
yeah. I mean, I would see 9 to 7, 10 to, they say 10 to 5 in Brookline.
But they're open on
10
Saturday.
to 7 in Newton, 8 to 8 in Wellesley. No prohibition on Sundays. We are proposing prohibiting it on Sundays. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just saying that's something we have to come to a consensus about. Right now, what we're proposing is the most restrictive of any other town that we've looked at.
I don't think I have a problem with it being 10 to 7. I think
I don't
later is
either.
probably better. I think rather than no one's gonna,
What about Sunday?
and I don't have a problem with having it open on Sunday as well. They're open now on Sunday.
So I removed the Sunday when I made my edits because folks have asked me to remove Sundays. because they want to make sure.
What is the basis of that, though?
Blue laws.
I mean, blue laws have
Haven't
been
anymore.
been
Yeah,
gone
it's
for
just-
a long
It's
time.
not-
30 years.
Protestant, you
Not
know.
start.
You couldn't buy alcohol and you couldn't go to the supermarket on Sunday because of the blue laws. I think they're
Right. I think
20
it's
years we've
just-
gotten rid of them,
I
something
don't,
like that.
I don't see any need to start.
Yeah, I think they,
So can we have a consensus? I mean, because as Maren said, we have to do something that we can come down from, but we can't load up.
Right, you can't become more
So
restrictive.
can we do 10 to 7 every day?
I think so.
And then we could come down from that, you know, we could make that more restrictive if,
You mean, no, you can't make it more restrictive, you can make it
well,
less.
assuming, no, to reduce the hours would be more restrictive.
Right.
But that's apparently, oh, is that,
During the public hearing process. I mean, right now, the draft going into the public hearing,
so we can add to it, but we can't subtract to it?
correct.
Okay.
We
Well,
can change it at the public hearing
Yeah,
process.
maybe
We can't
then
change it
keep
once it
keep
gets to
the way
town
it
meeting.
is. Yeah.
Right, we can change it on the 10th.
So maybe keep it the way it is.
Keep it and let people decide when we
Yeah.
have the public hearing on the 10th. What kind of hours they want to see. Any other things we need to talk about before we open up to the public? I'd like to kind of get a little bit of input. Are you
Yeah,
good?
go ahead.
You good? Everybody else is good? All right, so I'm going to open up for anyone who wants to speak on this. Please come to the microphone. Like I said, if you're only comfortable giving your first name and that you live in Littleton, that's fine with us. So, one at a time, and I'll raise your hand and I'll call you. You were the first one I was going to call, so you're good.
Maria Borowski on Ernie's Drive. Number one, thank you for doing this. I know you guys worked very hard on that. Two questions. One, which is the 1,000-foot limit as far as school systems, you know, public schools. I may have missed it. Can we expand that?
For more than 1,000 feet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, is that an option?
If we're looking at the red, I don't think there's, I could be wrong. Is there anywhere there?
1,000 feet doesn't seem to be very much.
Trying to think how far away the schools are from where we're proposing it.
Let's see.
And would it be the building or the property?
The property line.
Property line. Because then that should be specific.
Yes.
High school's over here.
I mean, it could also preclude daycare centers or any of the other types of businesses that might want to pop up.
Well, what do you think would be a proper distance?
I'm going to have to think of that. I was thinking 2 miles. That would be my recommendation.
Well, that might be a little tough, but, well, it's something for us to think about for the
That's
10th.
I would appreciate that.
10,000 feet.
We'll get an answer with the closest school to the districts we're proposing for the 10th for you.
Appreciate it. On the comment of hours, one consideration might also be as far as police force and their availability and staffings, you know, shift changes, et cetera, because if there is a problem, they're going to have to respond. So I actually prefer the 9 to 5, knowing that they are probably pretty fully staffed at that time and able to respond.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Tim Ahern from Lakeview Drive. And you mentioned the requirement for annual renewal that was listed here. I think that's a great idea. One of our neighbors suggested, and I think he sent his verbiage to Maren Toohill, and he thought that under applicability, it might be very useful to also apply renewal to any pre-existing firearms businesses in the town. So in other words, they could opt, within 1 year of this going into enactment, they too would be subject to renewals. And I think that's a,
That would not,
We
oh,
can't
sorry.
do that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. As a zoning bylaw, it can only be forward-looking. There is no wording that the town meeting can approve that would force a look on the existing businesses.
Okay, well, I just wanted to get that suggestion into the record.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. I could have said that, by the way.
Hi, Bobby, I'm at 16 Adams Street. I had a question about the definition, again, of firearms dealers, because there's allegations that there were disassembled weapons that were then being sold. That was the loop, one of the loopholes. Is there any way we can say that they can't be disassembled, that they can only sell completely intact firearms? Would that go into the definition?
I think that's what we want. We want firearms. We're debating right now the parts.
Yeah.
Whether or not an accessory is a part or what. We're still kind of trying to get answers for that. But yeah, I think we all agree with you that you're going to walk into a firearms dealer, you're going to buy a gun. All set to go.
All set. I just want to make sure that language gets in, that there's nothing disassembled can be.
No, well, parts.
I don't know, I don't think
Accessories.
that would be called a part or an accessory. I think it's, from what my understanding, it's a weapon that is illegal, that has been disassembled, so it fits through the loophole because it's disassembled, and then someone else sells the part.
Right.
So that part would be taken care of, but I still would like, because why would you go into a store to buy something that's not fully ready to go, right?
We want to make sure that if you're going to go in.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that language is
That
in,
you-
I don't know where it would fit, but I just want to make sure that's in there. And I don't know if this is possible either, but I know one of the issues with having the different assault weapons is that the argument is, well, it's legal because we could be selling them to the police. Types of weapons that are only legal for a dealer to have because of the possibility that they may be selling to the police. Is there any way we can say that these are retail businesses that are just selling to hobbyists and not to the police? I don't know.
It's a good question. We should find out. Our assumption is that everything is for retail sale. That would be, I would say, municipal sales or something. We will find out if we have to look at regulating that as well. That's a good question for town council.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Erica, Fox Lane. First, I want to say thank you. I know a lot of work went into this, and I think it's really important. I'm part of a group that put together the petition that I know you got. I have an updated copy with some more signatures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of things that I did want to ask about. It talks about the having to submit a security plan to the police department, but doesn't go into any specifics about what security measures would be required. So I was wondering if we could put in some information about that. The Giffords Law Center has some very specific language about what security measures should be included. Also, there was, I was wondering if we could include something about requiring liability insurance. Again, the Giffords Law Center has some very specific language on that. In terms of, not allowing felons to work there, I think I get what you mean, and I am all for rehabilitation, and I would like people to be able to come out and get a job. I don't think at a gun dealer is the right place for that. And it does refer to a very specific statute, and I believe that is a mass law. I just quickly looked it up, that said, like, basically you have to be able to own a weapon. You have to be licensable to own a weapon in order to work and to be employed by a firearms dealer. So I hope that stays in. I would also love to up the distances around schools, particularly. 1,000 feet is really small. I mean, it's like, when I first started looking at this, there was no sensitive site 1,000 feet from the mill. Like, it's like 0.2 miles. It's nothing. So I do think even upping it will leave open places that would be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to be? Yes, sir. Mark.
Mark Grandbacher, Hall Avenue, just speaking as a resident. I'm a little concerned about the 1,000 square feet between the businesses. I agree we want to limit the number as much as we can, but I don't know that the other bylaws that we were modeling this after actually had that distance between the businesses, and I'm concerned that if we put that in there, we're going to be opening ourselves up to lawsuits and get the whole bylaw thrown out and be back to square one. So I would prefer if we came up with another way of figuring out how we could limit the number, the density, like if we can say they can only share one wall or two wall, one wall in a building or something. So that we won't, to get 99 in, you have to have 99 rooms type thing, or that thing, where we're not as likely to hit that. I'm just concerned that, if we put something in that's too restrictive, the bylaw will be thrown out, will be challenged, it'll be an expensive thing, and we don't really want to go down that rat hole, so.
So the models we looked at, one I recall did 1,000 and one did 500. So these
I don't remember them seeing from each other. That's what I was concerned about.
No, they did.
They did,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was either Newton or
So,
Wellesley.
however, they haven't, I don't think any of them have been approved yet by the AG. Is that the
Although
case?
it's only
or-
looking at one.
Okay. My feeling about I just think there's 5 million loopholes to jump through with sharing walls and, this and that and the other thing. I mean, we could consider a combination of increasing distances from schools and decreasing, the distances from each other. Although I think first we just need to do the mapping exercise and see, what's left.
So I know that the courts have ruled that you can restrict where they go. I haven't seen any court restricting the number you're allowed to have, and I'm concerned that if we try and restrict the number through zoning, that could be a potential challenge.
We
So
restricted numbers in the cannabis retail.
That's different. That's not a constitutional right, and that's something the state allows you to do. So you're in a different.
So we're not specifically restricting numbers.
Correct,
Well,
which is
not explicitly, but if we said the only place you can put it is this one building, or these very few buildings, you are restricting the numbers. So that's the concern that I have.
So let's do the mapping and figure out what's left.
I think we've got enough areas to say that we're not restricting where they can go. We may restrict how many can go there only because of the logistics of how they relate to one another.
But I think if you actually, the question is then if you're going to do the mapping and then you say 1,000 feet from, then start doing the mapping, say if one goes here, how many are we potentially allowing? That's you take it to the next level when you do the mapping.
Well, we will for the 10th.
So, yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Greg from Foster Street. With regards to the permit application, can we make it dependent upon the business owner agreeing to the notice of enforcement regarding assault weapons that the AG issued in 2016? So to apply for that permit, you have to acknowledge and agree you will comply with that notice.
I don't know if we can do that, actually. That's not really a zoning, it's an enforcement and it's a...
And it's not a law, is it? It's just a...
Sure,
We're-
we're making requirements that are not legally based either, so you're making distances and you're making things that are specific to our town, and we have a right to decide where these businesses set up shop. We have criteria for them to apply for a business license. Can we include that as a requirement of application for the permit?
Could we be non-specific and say, because this notice might change with a new AG or,
Sure.
whatever, could we be non-specific and say, comply with any notice?
Well, I think...
Instead of specifically talking about this particular notice, talk about any notice issued by the AG relating to...
Well, if the AG says it's illegal to sell those, and they're getting a license to operate, they're gonna have to live with the firearms control and everyone else tell them you can't sell that because it's not legal. That's being done from a regulatory standpoint, I think, from the state and federal levels, which would supersede anything we put in there. We're just trying to put in dimensions and criteria to cite them here. Once they have to do everything legally inside that box. The way I look
Right,
at
but
it.
there are currently gun establishments working outside of that notice intentionally.
But we can't address that. That's
Well,
really more of a...
it's not a policing thing, it's a permitting thing. You can put any sort of requirement for a permit. This would be another requirement that if you want to do gun business in Littleton, you have to agree to comply with this notice.
But they're not really getting a gun permit from us. They're getting a permit,
Business license.
a business, exactly.
Special license, special permit.
Right. That's what they're getting. But they have to adhere to all the rules to get a gun license permit before they can get the business license from us. So we would hope that the laws would be enforced on that level before it comes down.
Sure.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't know how we could do it.
Okay, I'd love us
We
to
can ask,
investigate it.
we can
Yeah.
ask town council
Okay.
if we can actually enforce that part of it.
Appreciate it.
Yes, I would agree with that. Can I also ask a clarifying question? So
Thank you.
you just said the business license, so anybody seeking, if I was seeking to be a firearms business, I would need to fill out an application with the state, and then our Littleton Police Department reviews that application and then gives it a yes or no, right? But what they're coming to us for is a special permit. So they already have their firearms business license when they come to us, correct?
They should, as
Yes.
you said, they should have
Okay.
it.
I just wanted to clarify, okay, because I know
Okay.
that there's a lot of words we're all working
Right.
through. Okay, just want to make sure.
I-
Thank you.
think for our next hearing, could we get the police chief to be there to answer questions, as he's the official in town who actually...
Well, we'll have town council in if you'd like to.
I think so, because
Okay.
he's the one who manages the gun licenses.
Okay. We can ask the chief to show up.
Or whomever in the police department
Mhm.
does that.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Silverberg, and I live in Aspen Road in Littleton. I had one thought listening to the lady talking about, oh, now it's going out of my head, but that's all right. I think if you're going to license gunsmiths, are they going to be included in this group of businesses? I thought so from my reading of it. You're going to have a problem with parts, because that's what gunsmiths have, are parts, to repair guns. So you're going to get into an issue with the letter of the AG's recommendation or ruling or whatever it is, and the spirit of the law that you're doing. Maybe going to the AG's office makes sense before we put this on paper. Oh, I remember what the other one was. In terms of felons, I have to get a Corey to work in a daycare or a school. Why can't we just apply that the process is already there. It's a pretty simple legal process in this state.
I agree with you.
Could we put that in as just what people have to do, or something that says you cannot be convicted of a violent felony?
Well, we're gonna find out what the.
Because there's lots of people that get convicted of felonies for, like, stealing a car, maybe when they're 18 or 19 years old. You know, those people,
So we'll find out
I'm comfortable.
from the state, on state and federal level.
okay, thank you.
What-
And also, thank you for your work. You've clearly done a lot of work.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Mr. Sanders, I knew I'd get you sooner or later. I have the 2-minute rule.
Oh, yeah, 2-minute rule? No problem. Mr. Chairman, George Sanders, 672 Great Road. The question I have is that, what is the law with regards to the firearm, the business? They're requiring, I know it's a two-part concept here, they need to get a business license, and they also need to qualify to be a dealer in the state here. What does the state say in terms of in the community where these businesses can be? And secondly, when the permit was, a license was given, it seems though that since all these people congregated at 410 Great Road here, it looks like something at that time said that this is the place for you to go. So how did all this come about that all these gun dealers are at that particular location?
So I guess to answer that question, my understanding is that the law changed that you could no longer have a gun license if you didn't have a physical location. So there were already some gun dealers in the mill, told their other gun dealers that you can get space in the mill for a physical location. The federal government or the state changed the rules that said you can no longer use your house as a place of doing business to sell firearms. And that's why they started coming to the mill part.
Come to the mill, okay.
Right.
Now, our concern now is what with regards to the gun dealers? What is the concern of this town with regards to the gun dealers now? What is that we're trying to change to make our bylaw be legal?
Right. So what we're trying to do now is write a bylaw that says where they can go. As of before this, they could pretty much go anywhere in Littleton. Now we're going to restrict where they can actually go and how they can get a license to go there, so that it's no longer going to be an internet business. You have to have a brick and mortar place to do business. You're going to have to get a business license. You're going to have to do security. You're going to have certain hours of operation, which we're going to write a bylaw specifically for citing of gun dealerships in the town of Littleton, which we do not have now, which we can't go backwards, we can only go forward.
I understand that. Now, do you have any idea right now as to where you're going to say they can go?
Those red spots on that map are all the industrial A properties that we're making this bylaw so that they go in to be in the industrial A zone, those red spots.
What about the population and the distance in terms of the schools?
We're looking at all of it. Most of those red industrial areas are away from the school. And
Okay.
we're going to measure how far the schools are from those for the next meeting, just to give everybody an idea of actually how far. Right now, it says they can't be within 1,000 feet of the schools. That's what this bylaw says. And that's what we're working on there.
Okay, one last question. As far as the residents in these industrial locations, is there a factor there that...
1,000 feet. They can't be 1,000 feet from a residence.
Thank you.
That wasn't bad. Thank you, George. Anyone else, please? Anyone else? We'll take one or two more before. Mr. Scott, would you like to enlighten us?
Not sure that's possible.
We'll give it the best shot.
Well, I guess it's pretty simplistic in many things. You're changing definitions. You're taking a group that's totally legal, federally, state, local, and you're going to take 80 dealers, 80 people that are out earning a living, and you're going to eliminate it down to what looks to be about maybe 7. You have to be 1,000 feet apart, that little red one down the bottom, maybe 1, because then it's within the range of everything else. The point, the same thing there, you got maybe 4 there. And perhaps 2 up in the upper corner and 1 over there. So what you're doing is you're putting a bunch of people out of business because you don't like the way they earn a living. It's federally regulated. It's in the Constitution. It's permitted. And yeah, you're trying to take away their livelihood or someone's hobby. Now, I own nailing guns for building houses. They are now electric. I don't need a hose. Don't need a cord. I can pull back the guard on it and I can shoot it. I can send it 100 yards. You're going to regulate that now? How many people can own those type of guns? Because it's a gun. Go right through a 2x4. Going to regulate that? How many people can work in one building? So does a dentist only allow maybe himself and maybe his wife? He can't have somebody else work with him? You're regulating how many people could be in a building and earn a living? That's what you're trying to do? And I understand their concerns about, everybody's concerned. I'm concerned about guns too. I own some. I don't own any of the ones that a lot of these people are so afraid of, but they still do the same thing. I don't know what you're doing. I really don't know where your minds are coming from. You're trying to erode the Constitution.
No, I don't think that's...
Yeah, you're eroding the Constitution. You're trying to limit some man's or a woman's way of earning a living.
I don't
They earn livings doing this. And you're taking that away from them.
Is that in the Constitution?
What they're doing for a business, you're taking their business away.
I'm saying, what is the constitutional basis for that comment? We're talking about guns, which there is
And
a Constitution.
the living that these people
What is the
from-
constitutional basis of that comment, other than, I hear you, but I'm not sure how that applies directly to the Constitution, apart from the Second Amendment, which we all acknowledge. We're not attacking that in any way. People can still own guns. We're just talking about people who are
where they can earn a living making
selling
guns.
guns.
Not necessarily. I think as a town, we want to decide how many gun dealers is allowed in the town of Littleton. Right now, the bylaw that we're proposing has nothing to do, as Maren said, doesn't go backwards. The 87 people that are in that building are still allowed to be in that building. We're not trying to limit that. We're trying to do something for the future, moving
So
forward.
what happens when that building goes down?
Well, there's nothing this board can do about that, okay? Nor can you or anyone else. This is last we checked, this is America. If somebody decides they want to buy that and knock it down and put something else up, this is America. You're allowed to do that. They have the right to do that, just like they have the right to bear arms. All we're trying to say is that moving forward, we want a regulation that says there can be 7, 10, 15, whatever the number is, of gun dealers, that we want to decide where they go, how far away they are from schools. We want regulations to decide where they are. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to take anybody's
You're essentially doing it with this bylaw.
No, we're not. We're restricting where they can go. Yes, absolutely. We have, as a town, the town has the right to do that, and that's what the townspeople want. They want to be able to have safe areas where there's no gun dealers, but they still want to allow gun dealers. Nobody here is saying, we don't want gun dealers in the town of Littleton. They're saying we want to restrict where they go, keep them away from our schools, keep them away from our children and stuff like that. They have the right to do that.
Well, then why don't you put their work hours from 12 o'clock to 12:15? Because then you're open to 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night, because you're not making it more restrictive.
We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to decide.
No, it makes sense for what you were speaking of earlier, what the times they could be open.
We're trying to...
You go to town floor and they say, well, we think 10 to 7 is too many hours. You can't go from 11 to 6 now, can you? Or
Well,
11 to 3.
Mr. Scott,
So
that-
if you did it from 12 o'clock to 12:15, and you expanded the hours that they could work by town floor, then you'll have it. So just put that in there, 12 o'clock to 12:15, then you can expand it, not restrict it.
I think we're done here.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
we're done too.
Thank you. One last, anybody else? Okay, so we're going to continue this till November 10th.
Okay, so you're not continuing if the board would vote on scheduling
Oh,
a public
that's right,
hearing.
scheduling a public hearing, that's right. So we've got a rough draft, and we're going to schedule a public hearing for actual input. We'll have town council here. We'll try to have the police department, someone from the police department here to address questions and concerns about the actual licensing of the gun dealers, And we will have a bylaw, hopefully within a short period of time thereafter, that we can bring to town meeting floor. Does the board want to,
So my suggestion would be on Thursday, November 10th, at 7:30 PM.
7:30 PM? We'll have a,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
You happy now?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask just a procedural question?
Sure.
So if it's a public hearing on November 10th and you put out what the bylaw is going to be at that point, assuming we then go to town meeting and it's approved, is it retroactive to that date?
November 10th, it's retroactive too.
Okay.
The date we,
No, the first public hearing notice.
first public hearing notice, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you on November 10th at
7:30?
7:30. Thank you.
Can we turn down the AC?
It's down to 72 now.
Well, I don't have, is everybody else fine? If everybody else is fine, I'll put my coat on.
I'm okay.
It went from 76 to 72, Delisa.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll put on my coat.
Okay, we have a 7 o'clock public hearing for 571 Great Road, accessory use at the Active Farm Special Permit Site Plan for Springdale Farm.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Again, for your record, Douglas Hausler from Lampert, Hausler and Rodman, representing the applicant. We have reviewed the letters that were submitted by the various town departments with respect to the request for the special permit. Majority of those had no comments, including the police department and town building inspector. The one that did have some comments was the fire department. We're completely in agreement with their suggested comments, which were to create a roadway around the area where the wood chips would be and the mulching would be going on, so that for fire access. We're happy to do that, make it sufficiently wide enough and strong enough to support a fire apparatus. No issues, and that was consistent with one of the goals that the Mathesons had suggested at the last meeting that they were concerned about. So that issue should be hopefully resolved. We agree with the recommendations. With respect to showing access to the waterway, the existing water hole, we're happy to make that link as well to have an alternate source for safety precautions. With respect to the actual work area, the client is willing to move the work area 25 feet away from the Mathesons' boundary line, because we need that area anyway for the fire department to be able to get circular traffic. So happy to do that. That should address their concerns with respect to leaching over or through. Will be further away from them. There are specific questions about what will happen with the berm. John can address those more particularly if you have specific questions, but he intends to stabilize the area and have it sloped in such a way that it would contain anything, not leach out. He can be more specific if there's a need to, but the goal is to contain, not to let out.
I think we just optically to having a green vegetated berm instead of a pile of dirt. I think George maybe brought up what would the berm be, and we would make it a topsoil or organic material and seed it so it would look optically, somebody driving by or on the farm, it wouldn't look, it would hopefully contain the visual and hopefully for the Mathesons a piece, some of their view too from their property. And I think from a runoff standpoint, it's going to assist in hopefully keeping anything from running that direction in heavy rain. The area will be worked and moving piles around, but by pulling it 25 feet off of the wall, I agree with, I spoke with Scott briefly before the meeting that is actually going to help. I was out there today looking at some grades, and naturally, once you get about 25, 30 feet away, the grade pitches towards into the farm and away from the property line, so naturally it'll assist. So,
I believe that those address the major points that the board was looking for us to address. I know that there were efforts to contact the Mathesons. Fortunately, I don't believe any formal meeting ever took place for a variety of reasons. It didn't happen, but we tried to address the concerns that they stated, and I believe we've addressed them. and it's consistent with the recommendations of the various town departments that all seem to be in favor of this. So other than that, we'll be prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Board have any questions or concerns? Lisa?
Yeah, I do have several concerns. I'm concerned about the dust. You know, I've done some research since our last meeting and, you know, the health hazards with silica dust. I know you mentioned you're going to use water to kind of keep the dust down, but is the water, like, are you going to have blades going all the time that rocks are being crushed so that there's always water on those rocks? And are you going to be addressing like the dust that's on the roads?
So a couple different treatments depending on what we're doing. So the crushing part of it, which is rock, is usually dusty. So I think I touched on it briefly, but the plants have dust suppression systems on them, and all of our plants are very new and they all function properly, and we also can't be emitting plumes of dust. I know that the first cloud doesn't go in a neighbor's yard, they're going to call the building department, and there's regulations on how much dust is allowed to leave a property and everything like that. So what we typically do is when the rock crusher is running is we put a water tank next to it, and that feeds through a pump the dust suppression system. It works very well. As far as that's only about 2 months out of the year we talked about, agreeing to try to limit that to spring and fall during a time of year. Hopefully when people aren't out enjoying their yards because of the noise. But also dust-wise, I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said there's zero dust with the operation. It's impossible to, unless you put a tent over it, there's just no way to completely contain it. All we can do is best management practices to, you know, manage that. So, and we do that.
But the main operation that's going up there is mostly all compost. That piece of the puzzle is so minimal to what we're planning on doing there with the composting. And as for like the access roads and whatnot that the equipment would be utilizing, is the same gravel roads that the tractors go on every day. So, I mean, we're already traveling them with the tractors as well, so.
Yeah.
But I don't want people to think that our main focus up there is to crush rock. That's not what the main piece of this puzzle is. It's the composting yard, so that'll be a very small window of time. And
that material naturally
and that's far down the road.
That material naturally is humic, so it's moist, right? So to activate a composting operation, it needs moisture to break down material. So you're not going to have a lot of dust. I won't say none, but you're not going to have a lot of dust being emitted like you would from a quarry or something like that. You're just not going to see it. Just because the material is naturally humic and wet. So
I have more questions.
Go ahead. Fire away.
So, okay, you brought up the composting. Now, you had mentioned at our last meeting that it's all local. You bring it in from local. What does local mean?
Basically, towns and municipalities.
Just within Massachusetts?
We haven't received anything outside.
But would you be able to? Like, I guess I would like more clarification on the definition of local.
Our intention is to take it in from local, meaning Massachusetts. So leaf litter and brush, which is primarily the two things that go into a composting operation, are inert, right? So most composting facilities now separate grass clippings, and most municipalities separate grass clippings from their composting operation. Because the issue with grass clippings, and the Mass has brought this up too, is it's laden with fertilizers, it's laden with all kinds of chemicals that people treat their lawn properly and improperly with, that then end up in a product that we're going to use for composting on the farm, as well as to sell to somebody. So the liability becomes on us if we sell a product that is contaminated with chemicals to your home and you find out about it. We're now liable as a generator to then come clean up your property as an insurance claim. So we don't want to do that. And most municipalities have started to find locations that are DEP sites, which is what we're going to apply for a permit with your consent, to have a regulation there where we know what material we're taking in and we know who the generator is that's giving it to us, because they're as liable to give it to us to then give it to you. And that's kind of where the whole insurance world has stepped into the realm, as they're trying to regulate anything and everything to put the onus on the municipality to not dispose of it improperly, to find dump sites that are permitted that they can regulate, so DEP isn't dealing with all the homeowners that get contaminated materials. Because that was where there was no regulation and it was a free-for-all, and then people were finding contaminants in their yards, and it could be from things they did years before that they had no idea the implications. So you have to be a good steward too. I mean, we have to operate that business as if we're...
But where, so is it just going to be leaves and like, you know, wood, or are you bringing in construction materials? It's just...
Leaves, brush, wood.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We're not intending, no food waste, no, you know, some composting operations take in screened out C&D waste, which is the screened out wood products from places like Fort Devens that have those recycling operations. They're trying to add their wood product into a mulch product. We're not producing mulch there. Our intention is to produce compost that we can use on the farm, mix with our topsoil and sell. So that's the goal. So it takes too long to break down the wood product too, timeline-wise.
Mm-hmm.
If you have too much, if you start taking in all that, they call it the pulp that they produce, they're better to send it to Ohio and bury it, which is what they do with it now. Everybody's trying to find outlets to recycle whatever they can, but I find they can't get it clean enough. I've seen it personally, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Jeff? So the DEP, like what kind of permit will you be applying for?
There's a farm-specific permit through DEP.
Okay.
That is specifically tailored, which, Doug, did you forward that to the planning board or no? I think I sent it to you.
I think we did, but I can... We
can forward it. So it's the regulation from the state, from DEP, which explains the regulations and the purpose of the regulations, almost like your bylaw that you guys have in place for Jamie to have this kind of operation. It's regulatory, but not to the level of like a landfill, where nobody could afford to do that but a really big business, and that is a limiting factor. So if they said, a lot of farms created their own compost, Jamie and his farm is not nearly of that scale, but some produce enough vegetable waste and everything from their operation that they run their own composting facilities, and they didn't want to shut down all those opportunities for farmers, so they have a specific program, which we can share with you, and that's what we plan on enrolling under. I don't know.
And we do have the DEP. It is part of our pack.
But but how does that, so it's farm-based, but yet you're bringing in all this material. How will that play into this farm?
So it's a 1-year permit from them, and every year you renew it with the state. And they have a fellow that comes out after we have consent from the local authorities that, yes, you've gone that route, because they want you to go that route first. We have consent from you guys for a special permit. We then apply. We have a meeting with them on site. There's some design plans we have to come up with to submit to them as part of their permit, which show grading, positive drainage, all those things to apply. And then they develop a site-specific operating plan, which we could then forward over to you guys for your own record. And every year they make informal visits to check up on you. They can come anytime they want by right and check in to make sure that you're following the regulations. And there's some reporting. We have to report the material that we're taking in and the material we're taking out. And they want to make sure that a certain percentage of which is in that regulation is used on the farm. So that's the intent.
So this process is specific to what you are trying to do.
And it's monitored
Okay.
by an outside state agency.
Yeah. And if you violate it, they revoke your permit, and there's actually fines involved too if you don't follow it.
So any condition, we should condition our permit based on compliance with this regulation?
For the composting operation, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, the other facets of the operation, which, you know, the mulch, right? There is no regulation on the mulch. You're buying in mulch and we're selling it. That'll also be on that footprint. But definitely we would be amenable to any kind of condition requiring that we follow, and that, you know, if we were to continue composting and that permit was to expire, you could close down that part of the operation and whatever notice you need. We're more than comfortable with that. So.
You good?
Mm-hmm.
Bartlett?
Yeah, at the beginning, when you first came in, you were talking about tree stumps that you have on the farm and various locations. And I've kind of lost track of what the plan is for those tree stumps. And I was wondering if you're going to chip them and make them into wood chips. Or
Yeah, we want to grind them down to a 6-inch size, and then the mulch people will bring down finished mulch product, and they'll take that away for us for free. So it'll help us get rid of the farm, get rid of all the organic wood material, and that'll help with, just the disposal.
And reclaiming the land.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I just had lost track of that.
Yep, that's our intention.
Anna?
So this has been great. Some of my questions have been answered. So I think the only one that I have left is, so if the fire department had specific requests, then we just condition those as well in terms of making sure that those get done. And then the buffering, so would you mind just telling me about that one again? Because I know that was part of the concern with the Mathesons, right?
Yeah, I mean, we showed it on 2 sides here. I think it's going to be more of a U shape because we'll run it down the side along the Mathesons, which hopefully will help reflect some noise. Also give a visual barrier. The Mathesons are a little bit lower than us, but if we have a berm there, basically any piles in operation would be not visible from the property. And I think it's going to really help with the runoff concern, right? The runoff concern was, if there were any contaminants or whatever were to happen, if it were to leave the site, if we build a U shape, it actually will be trapped within that footprint. So I think it would be vegetated grass berm, like you've probably seen people's yards and all over the place, probably 15 feet high, probably about 20 feet wide, 25 feet wide at the bottom, and something that we could mow and maintain so it's not, once or twice a year, hit it with a boom mower just to keep it so there isn't trees and everything else growing through it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I have a couple of questions. So let's go back to that berm. I know you decided to push it 25 feet to you heard what the Mathesons had to say. So is that going to be 25 feet, then the berm starts?
Yeah.
So it's going to be actually like 40 feet away from...
Our operation will be probably close to 50.
50 feet away from the Mathesons,
Yeah.
okay.
And that gets us up that gradient. I talked to Scott previous to this meeting about, it really does help, but we're looking at the grading this morning that, naturally the Mathesons are lower than us by probably about 25 feet at that location. So they have a well down there and some concerns that they had about, the cattle and where the water gets pulled from, and I get it. And if I were to appease their concern, it's bedrock, so it's really hard for us to probably create a swale to pick up runoff. So it actually makes a lot of sense if we do pull it in and put the berm, you got to seal on top of the rock to make sure that the water's not going that way. I think it's a great idea. I didn't really think of it at the first pass, but that's why we do this, so.
And in that 25 feet, there will be a gravel road?
Yes.
For equipment?
Yeah, and I welcome walking with the fire department and looking at the land and getting their input, and I told Doug the same thing. We can set up a meeting and have that all part of a plan, and we can revise this plan to show whatever ads come out of the concerns tonight.
And the other thing is I noticed, I did a little bit of research, not a lot on composting, but most dumps don't take grass anymore. They take leaves and brush.
Yep.
For the simple reason, so you'll take no grass.
Correct. Yep.
And you'll take it from local municipalities around us.
Yep.
And the fact that you're okay with a year, if we tie our permit to your permit with the state, you're okay with that. So, because one of the concerns was the Board of Health had some concerns about whether it was going to emit a motor, and we'll know that right away. And
as long as it's coterminous. If the DEP says it's renewed, we would think that we wouldn't have to come back before your board.
I think if you're being a good neighbor and there's no complaints or anything, I don't think the board would have any problem if everybody else is happy with it.
I think it makes sense to do that schedule-wise, but that only relates to one of the issues that might arise. The other one might be noise, etc. So
It
because those issues would get first relayed to the building commissioner.
Yes.
And then we would have to address the building commissioner, so we don't have to wait a year or,
True.
it's gonna be instantaneous.
Noise is gonna be really an issue. If you're gonna use.
Well, I hope it's
Well,
not.
stone.
No, but I understand your
Stone, yeah.
concerns.
Well, the crushers now, like, we don't hear from Middlesex anymore, whatever it's called now, because they have the state-of-the-art, they have the suppression there, they have all the blankets there for the noise and everything, I would assume.
But will you have the same?
Will your crushers be the same as like, sort of like, on a smaller scale, what Middlesex uses out there? There's no issue with noise out there anymore because they use the state-of-the-art crushers. They have the water suppression, they have the blankets to keep the noise down.
I'm fortunate enough that all of our equipment is no older than 2 years. So it is the latest and greatest, and it's not blowing smoke, and it's not, I mean, we're fortunate that we're able to have that equipment, and I own that equipment. It's not like I'm renting that or hiring somebody to come in, so I'm lucky. Yes, the answer to your question is it's going to meet MSHA regulation, OSHA regulation, because we send these to job sites all day long that the word crusher is probably, feared. It's like blasting. Things have come so far in the last even 10 years.
What about, you talked about taking the topsoil off the ground.
Yeah.
Any idea about, because the last thing we're gonna want is a dust bowl out there with a lot of dust coming back and going into the neighbors. Are you planning on putting anything back down there to try to stabilize what little you're gonna have left out there?
Well, I think, it's gonna happen in sections, so even in those big boxes, that's a year-long goal. It's probably in thirds as it goes. So, I mean, there's a chance that there's a couple acres open at a time, but, I mean, our plan is bring it up to the screener, screen it through, get the rock out, put it back down the field, apply some compost to the top of it, churn it in, and put it into production in sections as we can. It's gonna be about a year after at least, so typically we're gonna cover crop it at the end of the year, just like we do on the regular farm.
That was kind of my point. You're gonna put something, you're gonna grow something
Yeah,
on top of it.
I mean, during the year, during the operation, it's really hard to probably manage, to say that, we're gonna cover crop or dust suppress and all that. The cost of that would be exorbitant. A construction project, I could see it being part of the plan because somebody has to fund that. Unfortunately, we're here to try to help the farm get to where it is with limiting cost if we can, so. We'll do it respectfully, I promise you that.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I guess my next question would be to the Mathesons. What are your thoughts on the berm, the moving it further away from your property? Are you comfortable with that? Do you have any more questions or concerns that we should be addressing?
First of all, the Mass Department of Agriculture rules are that you have to be 50 feet from a property line to compost, not 25.
Well, he's going to be 25
Yeah, so
and
we'll be
another
50.
50 feet, so he'll be 50.
Second of all, I heard people complain about bring up different issues. I think everybody needs their concerns answered. There was Mrs. Mitchell had a concern about the noise and hours of operation. The Fields had a concern about the dust and the noise. I think everybody's concerns have to be answered. Next, I haven't heard anybody talk about the traffic impact. There's, the applicant stated that he wanted to come up with 200,000 yards of compost. According to university studies, compost, leaves, and brush shrinks down by 80%. So to get 200,000 yards, that's 1 million yards of material coming in. In a 100-yard truck, that makes 10,000 trucks coming into the property and 10,000 going out. That's 20,000 truck trips on 119. The bridge at Beaver Brook on 119 is posted at 73,000. These trucks are registered for 101,000. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
What time period would the 10,000 over the scope of
No,
the?
we're not the applicant.
Okay.
How long?
We're thinking about 10 years is our goal. So if you figure out, it's about, at that rate, it's I don't know, if you did it over the whole year, which is not the way it's gonna go, it's gonna come in spring and fall. The leaves are gonna come out of the municipality when they get dumped there, and they get moved to us, and then clean up the yard, and then receive the fall brush. So it's probably condensed to a 6-month period that the hauling's going on. They're not doing the dead of the winter and not doing the in the summer. That's really not when that's happening.
So how many tons are you expecting on a yearly basis?
The simple math is 200,000. I guess I haven't done the homework to figure out the exact load count, but I know it seems like a huge number. It's really not. But I can certainly provide that and get an idea. I mean, it's a state road. That culvert that they're talking about is posted. Every sand and gravel company, including themselves that have dump trailers, roll over that at over 100,000 every day that they own. So they know about it because of that. I don't mean to be a pessimist, but the state has not ticketed people going over that because they have no fix for it yet. And that's the case with probably about 3,000 roads in Massachusetts. It's the only way west, unless they go through your neighborhoods.
Well,
So unfortunately.
I would like to see what kind of trips you think you're gonna generate. I think
Yeah, we
that's
can put that
important.
together.
And again, just to reiterate, the noise and the dust, you're going to do the best management practices like we have in town now to try to minimize the dust and the noise, and the hours of operation while you're crushing will be?
7 to 3, Monday through Friday. You know, we're agreeable to that for sure.
Okay.
In all reality, crushers don't get going till 7:30 in the morning. They just have to warm up. They're a type of piece of equipment that can't, so.
And they'll be compliant on all those issues with your existing.
Existing bylaw, which is.
So respectfully, I think those have been answered.
We have a gravel operation in Littleton. We've had it for years, and
Yes.
we've had issues, and luckily we don't
Gotta
have
mitigate it
any
as
anymore.
best we can, yeah.
The board have any other questions before I open it up to the public? State your name and come to the microphone, please. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Right.
Fran Matheson from Springbrook Farm. It sounds like the plan has downsized a bit from the last meeting when I was hearing things like massive project and massive amount of rock, and tonight it feels a little bit downsized from that. But anyway, I'm a registered nurse for many years, and I'm here to discuss the health impacts I think this is going to have on the community. The Centers for Disease Control lists several health hazards of exposure to stone dust. It's not ordinary dust. It contains silicates, and breathing in that, even at a low exposure, causes disease, lung disease. And if you already have asthma or autoimmune diseases or COPD or even advanced age, breathing in this stone dust makes breathing uncomfortable. And I have someone I know very well who operated a stone crushing site come to the farm, and I explained where the neighbors are at the farm and so forth, and he said that it is going to be miserable for the abutters. It's going to be dusty. So there's that, and also it's dangerous to, even if it doesn't make you sick, it's dangerous to your health, overall health, to breathe in this dust. And the CDC suggests that the way to prevent this is to not have dust in the air, the stone dust in the air. And many people who live near these end up wearing masks, which we've gotten used to. So I feel that if it's a health hazard for the abutters, then it's an issue for the town. And if it is a massive project of crushing all the stone, because that's what that land is up there, it's all stone and ledge, then that might be a real health issue. So I think that we need to protect the health of the residents of the town. And I also think that the town has something very, very, very special, something no other town has, and that's an identity as an agricultural town. So we want to keep our towns, our farms in our town really pristine and in their natural state, in a place where people can rest their eye. So these kind of, and I'm familiar, I have a construction family, these kinds of situations, these sites, these compost facilities are big eyesores for a long, long time, a long time. And so I was just hoping that people would agree that we are really a special town, and for our farms are beautiful, and we want to, we want to keep that.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders, I'm going to take a shot with you again.
Is it 2 minutes this time?
I'll give you 3. It took you half a minute to walk up here.
Yeah, I know. George Sanders, 682 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, I have a couple concerns with regards to the 7 locations that they're going to dig up the rocks and so forth and so on. My concern, one, is are they going to dig up the soil and screen it at that parcel, each parcel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Or are they going to dig up the parcel and tractor, take it over to a particular point and do the screening there? Because one is that if you do that on each parcel there, well, depends, the first, I don't know how many inches of the soil, I'll just say 8 inches of the soil, it's probably going to be pretty dry. As you go down a little deeper, it's probably going to be a little bit more wet. So when they screen that, the first portion of that, you're going to get dust that's going to be in the air. So that's close to where the residents are, but if they're back down there by the berm and they're setting that up and screening it down there, at least it don't have the same distance or short distance of traveling. That would be a concern that I would have with regards to, are they doing it on each individual parcel, screening the soil for the rocks, to get the rocks out. The other thing is, I believe they measured the weight of a vehicle going across a bridge. It may have a 70,000 capacity, but it's the portion of the vehicle that is on the bridge, so it's not like all 100,000 is on the bridge of the 70,000 pound bridge, okay? I think that no matter how we look at this, mold it or shape it, it's a tough situation that they're coming in here to try to get a permit to, say, save the farm. And naturally, everybody's saying, well, we want, them to be progressive in saving the farm and so forth. What I really think is that we're not going to solve all of the issues that's going to come up with this operation that they're going to put in place. But I like the attitude about the effort that they're putting into the project to try to do the very best that they can. And I don't think we can ask, as human beings, any more out of a person that's trying to do the right thing, because that's what we want everybody to try to do, is come in here and do the right thing and present and listen to you as to what you suggest and so forth. Now, I know they talked about fire with the
compost.
The compost. Now, I didn't hear anything about the fire department. I know that it was asked of to have something in place in case there's a fire. So I would like to know what is it that the fire department said in terms of getting a vehicle in there, if there's a fire, that they would be able to put it out. So I think the Madison has a concern there that, and the neighbors around there has a concern if there's a fire, because if the wind going in the opposite direction towards the neighborhoods, then that's a concern, because you're burning something here that is not healthy that's being put into the environment. So I think we need to know how the fire department address that situation if there's a fire. And I think that, it may be tough for you right now, but you'll get through it. It's just a matter of us understanding and giving you what I consider the benefit that you're doing the best that you can. And we can only ask so much if you're putting that effort forth. Now, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, George.
That's the fire department.
So the fire department wanted us.
Want to answer his question, though?
Go ahead.
Screening's in that box.
Go ahead.
So it's not going to be in those sections. Material will be stripped
So you're
off.
transporting it to the box and
Gonna
then.
come up to the box, get screened in the box, and then put back. Yep.
Okay.
Don't want to answer this, and I appreciate the feedback, and I agree with them.
I just want to give Mr. Sanders the fire department's letter that we received, so he would know.
You're going to put a service road around it so that the fire department is accessing.
We're going to comply with exactly what the fire department requires.
Yeah, and then
Per
we gotta
statute.
have a gravel road that'll support a 100,000-pound vehicle at 90 feet long.
Plus the access
So
to the water hole.
they'll have plenty of access right into the middle of it if they need it. As added safety, it's not like it's a cart path going down through a field. It's a gravel road. So, I think the chief will understand it when he drives the site with us, which I encourage him to do. So.
Anyone else? Any?
Sort of.
Yes, ma'am, way in the back.
Hi, I'm Marty Mitchell, 30 Beaver Brook Road, and I live at the bottom right corner of that map where there's a little white house. That might be John's, I'm next to that. I'm a little bit concerned about a couple of things. One is that what I was told is that those 7 parcels are going to be prepared for agriculture, so that the fields can be expanded from the front of the farm, and that would bring in more income to have more. But it seems like now that they're going to take the topsoil off, you said, and sell it.
No.
No. Oh, you're not going to sell it?
No, we're gonna haul in
mix
compost
it with the
material,
compost.
mix it
Okay, that
to
was a
thicken the soil,
misunderstanding.
to
That-
thicken our soil, because
Great.
we don't have much soil now. That's the
Okay.
whole point of the reclamation of this.
So if the
You need to
topsoil's
bring it
gone,
in.
then you're going to have a hard time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's good, I'm glad. But my other concern is, I was involved somewhat with the Halloran Farm and the neighbors there, and I sold a few houses abutting them. And the traffic from these 18-wheelers constantly coming in with litter for his compost there was unbelievable and untenable for the neighbors. It was constant, 20-wheelers, 18-wheelers coming in from Boston and all over the state to that place and dumping in and out and in and out. It was just awful. And so I'm a little worried about lots and lots of big trucks. I'm 78. Your 10-year project, I'll be dead by the time you're done.
Don't say that.
Everybody in my
Hopefully not.
family dies at 86.
Wow.
So,
Can't solve that problem, sorry.
I know, but I'm worried about the quality of my life for the next 10 years. We're all just retired. All of us abutters are, close to 80.
You're gonna live a long time.
Yeah, and I just don't want to listen.
No, I mean, and I don't want anybody to forget what the intention of this is. Jamie can't keep this farm alive without this, I don't think. We don't have an avenue to sell enough vegetables. There's not enough margin in it. There's not enough support locally, and everybody says they want to buy local. You need that support. It's still such a big endeavor, and why we see all these farms going away is because developers have the money to buy them and put a check in front of Jamie's family who's broke their ass for four generations out there. They never had that kind of money. It's very enticing, right? I mean, anybody would do it. Anybody in this room, speak very candidly, because that's the way I am. This is super attractive to a developer. Put 45, 50 homes in here like that. And what does that turn your next 8 years into? Blasting, crushing, hammering, removal, grading. We've all seen it. These guys have had to permit it against their will. But I'm trying to avoid that, and I think Jamie is too.
There's not enough water in town for all these.
No, and your concerns are not invalid, right? I mean, the intention of us getting the traffic away from Beaver Brook where you live, and a lot of these other abutters that might be here, putting it down that logging road directly onto 119, visibility for 500 feet unobstructed in both directions, there was reason why we proposed that. And there's other ways to get in there, but we feel like that's the best thing we can offer. And improving that access for fire control, for operation of the farm, for everybody. No truck's gonna pull up there and sit on the road with the blinkers on and be in the way. They got tons of room to pull in, they got tons of room to get off the road. They have visibility coming in and out, and I don't know how else we could do it. And I think, I'd be lying if I said there was something better. I don't think there is, and I think what we're presenting is the only thing we think we can. And I'm not being cognizant, there's trucks, right, and there's lots of them, so. And I'll do that calculation, try to figure out roughly what it is.
Anyone else?
I just want, do I have to come up? I just have a really quick question.
Stand up and just yell it out.
All right, I'll just yell it. So, will Onyx?
Your name, please.
Oh, sorry, Gail Matheson, Springbrook Farm. And my only question is the farm going to actually do the trucking from the municipalities, or are the municipalities coming in and trucking it? The only reason I ask is I'm sure Mr. Durkin's company and his people would be like super careful, dump it properly. And you know how municipalities can be, not our town, but just making sure that the drivers are going to be respectful and dumping it in the right place. So I just wondered who was actually trucking it on in.
So it'll be both, most likely. You know, it'll be, some municipalities we can't haul from. They have contracts with trucking companies to dispose of it, so they'll be bringing it to us, but also they'll hire Onyx's trucks to haul, and hopefully they'll help support the business, you know. But yes, it'll be both, and there'll be a full-time Monday through Friday person from Onyx there managing that. So it's never gonna be, like as it is now, you know, we got some loads of leaves coming in, trying to get ready and create some berms and things that we, you know, need to do. They'll be staffed, so there won't be an issue where there isn't somebody there.
What about hours? Because the last thing I think people want to hear is the beep, beep, beep it. You're gonna be 8 to 4 to 8?
No, we're gonna comply with normal working regulations per the building department, I think, you know, is what we like. I think it's normally a 7 to 5 operation, Monday through Friday. I believe the town regulation says you can work till 7. We're not planning on that. We'd agree to 7 to 5. And then Saturdays, you know, most likely in the height of the season, spring and fall, we'll be there on Saturdays, but it won't be every Saturday in the summer, and it won't be in the winter, any Saturdays. So typical, what we would call typical hours. So we can put that in a letter to you guys, what we're proposing.
Okay. Yes, sir.
For Matheson Springbrook Farm, obviously he just said that they'd be manned by Onyx. So in other words, it's Onyx's commercial business, not the Cruz's Springdale Farm that's going to be running it?
If I
So
may,
it's a commercial business?
I have to buy half of my farm. I own 50% of it. I'm in front of you because I cannot afford growing vegetables to buy out my mother for the value of what my 50% of the land I don't own is worth. We have a very unique situation. His family owns a construction company. They're going to lease that pad off of me to help me pay the mortgage to buy out my mother. And with that, because trust me, it's the last thing that I wanted to do in every fashion, they're gonna help me reclaim those parcels up there and the pieces that you see mapped out so that my farm can grow and produce more to hopefully take on that mortgage payment 100% off of the vegetables and items that I produce when he is out of there in 10 years. So Onyx is family to us in a very unique situation, and farms go under because of the situation that I'm in. I can list off 10 right now that are going through similar situations, but they do not have the unique opportunity that I do with John. So it's a win-win for me. It's a win for my mother because she wants to be bought out at what the land is actually worth. And otherwise, if this doesn't happen, I start carving off lots until I can make that mortgage payment something that I can actually swallow every month. And I can tell you guys right now, And everybody that is looking at me, I don't want anything to happen to that farm. I've been there my whole life. I have put everything I have into it, and I want it to stay 100% intact. And this is the only way that I can do it. And there's been plenty of people who have looked at me and said, just carve off her half and let her sell it. And I can tell you that I will not be on my half looking up at the whatever gets constructed on the other. I just can't do it. The whole farm will go away. So this is why I'm in front of you. And everybody is looking at this like it's a commercial component. Sure, but remember why I'm doing it. And as we're talking about dust and we're talking about noise, look at what's around us. Tractors tilling, sprayers in the morning, sprayers at night. I would not want anything to happen to my farm. I don't want anything. I don't want to harm it. I don't want to be looking at an eyesore. Everything that we're going to do there, we're going to do the right way. I live there. I drink the water. I walk it every day. But I'm here because I have to save the other half of my farm. I'm not here because I want Onyx to take it over.
Thank you.
And to be honest, Onyx is a much bigger operation than this. Not to say it, this is for Jamie and I. This is not a new location for Onyx that's going to make a ton of money we can retire off of. Closing statement.
One follow-up. Go ahead, Mr. Matheson.
Yep, so again, it sounds like it's a commercial operation, and they don't have the proper zoning for that.
It's the activity that governs, not the operator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm Tammy Lee Savoy from Beaverbrook Road, and I've seen a lot of increased traffic. Trucks rolling by 55 miles an hour down Beaverbrook Road. Huge trucks. It's impacting the wildlife. It's impacting our life. I'm concerned about blasting possibly going on, and woke up startled with blasting one day. I'm not saying it to you guys, but I'm concerned about blasting. And I lived up in New Hampshire, in Hudson, New Hampshire, Litchfield, New Hampshire, and saw little operations like this turn into major gravel pits. And you might want to take a look at Hudson and Litchfield and what happened to situations like this that turned into major gravel pits that are eyesores. I'm concerned about foundations because our house abuts this land, and it's all ledge. All of this is ledge. It's all rock, solid rock, sheets of rock, and if this gets dug into or anything, it's going to impact the foundations of the residents all around that area. And in doing so, I'm just wondering what kind of insurance that the town has in case there's a class action lawsuit against the town for allowing something that might not be environmentally correct at this point.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I don't think they'll be able to blast because they're going to need a permit just to blast, and we can condition that no blasting. I don't think you have a problem with no blasting up there.
I don't even think it applies. We're not even asking to remove rocks, so you guys can do whatever you want in that aspect.
Yeah,
you just heard from Jamie the intention, that's what's going to be on this permit, you know. I understand the concern.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Justine Stedman, 17 Old Great Road, Abutter. So there's no blasting, but if it's ledge, how do you break it up into gravel? Like pounding it, and then if you're saying 7 o'clock in the morning, as Margie said, we're all retired, we like to enjoy our property. And regarding, I'm thrilled that the trucks are coming off 119, not through Old Great Road. However, you have to realize that 119 was shut down just a few days ago because of a multi-vehicle traffic accident, I believe. So exactly how is that going to make things better for you?
Well, we're not planning to remove any ledge. Everything is superficial boulders on top of the ground and they're in the soil. So our plan is to remove the boulders, separate them from the soil, and we're not hammering and removing the ledge from the ground. And then the only way to get rid of those boulders is for us to crush them, is what we're proposing, and that is not the intention of this project, and you can write till you're blue in the face. I mean, we're trying to keep this really explicit and be cognizant of everybody's concerns, but we have to process the rock, because otherwise what do we do with it? Leave a massive rock pile in 5 acres? Some child that possibly is one of your grandchildren, which we don't have the property fenced, who they all walk on the property, falls in that rock pile, pushes his buddy off the rock pile, breaks his leg, gets stranded in the back, you know, there's many things that from a owner's risk standpoint, we don't want to have. And I know nobody thinks of those things, but I live that life. I am that guy. I process rock for a living. And I don't want to leave a pile of rock there. It's a huge liability for me. You know, it's, oh, cool, look at the rock piles, go climb on it. That's what every child says, and you guys probably did it as a kid. We got to mitigate it. We don't want it to be there. It's a liability for Jamie and myself. And I promise you that's not going to happen. And we're not going to whole ram rock away and change grades, and it's a natural rolling farm. That's the beauty of it. We just need to thicken the soil. We got to get the rock out,
So just to recap, you're not going to blast. You're going to take the rocks that are loose, remove them, crush them to make your roadways. You're going to compost so that you can increase the soil that's out there.
Yep.
That is what your intention is. It's not to be a commercial operation out there. You're not looking
No, I mean, there's still the mulch, Mark, and things like that we're going to continue to do, topsoil mulch, right? But that's not topsoil being taken from the farm, so eventually you break down on compost and you have topsoil, you put the two together, we can sell a great product. Much smaller operation than what is going on here. You know, we're talking about a 4-acre parcel on a big site. This is 10%, like we talked about, is about 10% of the area of this whole back field area. It's really minimal to make this happen. And it's, I don't know.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to be heard? Go ahead, Anna.
So I had two follow-up questions based off what we just heard. So we know that the rotary there at Beaver Brook and 119 is going to get created. Do we have a timeline of when that will be?
No.
No timeline? Okay. And the reason why I asked is because that's something that would be good to know, given the advent of more vehicles through there. And then the second one is, so when will the fire department be going through? Do we know?
We're going to see if they can come out this week.
Okay.
Incomingly.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do it whenever they want.
Well, I know I'd be interested in going out.
No, the fire department has indicated it has no problems with it, number one.
Right.
Number two, it'll comply with the standard the chief wants to apply, and we can meet that standard.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of
Having them out
having the chief identify precisely what he wants done.
Yeah, exactly. So when he goes out, if it's possible to have additional folks along, I appreciate that.
Good.
Anyone else?
No, that's it. You're good. I'll take one or two more people. Yes, ma'am, again.
Hi, I'm Christine Field. We're at 6 Beaver Brook. We're that little hobby farm closest to the road, the big, right in the middle. My biggest concern is, other than the noise like everyone, is the air quality. I actually do have asthma. I work from home. I'm home all day, every day. Since all that land was cleared, the wind comes directly over my property in a way it never did before. What sort of testing is going to be done to ensure that the air is safe for us, for the abutters?
Well,
With the rock splitting is what I'm mostly concerned about.
OSHA and EPA
And Board of Health.
are going to have to monitor it. They're going to have to get them out there as they do the rock crushing to make sure that they're in compliance. They're actually probably going to have to take tests right next to it and 10 feet away and everything else there's all kinds of new regulations for silica. They're going to have to comply with all of that before they're even allowed to continue to crush. So
The new regulation is whenever we move a rock crusher to a site, we have to register the site and tell them we're moving a rock crushing operation if it's coming in for more than 1 week of crushing. So now they know where they all are in the state. There's people that deviate from that. I can show you our records. We comply with that. So they'll be on notice that we're there, and they're welcome. They don't have the staff to come regularly, but they will check all the time.
Well, what does that mean, though? They don't have the staff. I mean, is it like yearly? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a concern, Christine, and you call the building department, obviously
Well, I
they're
mean, I
gonna
don't know
respond.
if I'm breathing poison. I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I mean, I want you guys to be successful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is going to impact all of us.
Oh, I get it, and the guy that loads it and hammers it, it's sitting right on it, I'm not trying to kill him, so believe me, we're doing the best we can, you know,
But
I can't guarantee.
he's choosing it, we're not choosing it. I mean,
So we can condition that the Board of Health go out there and take a look at the operation and make sure if they have any concerns about the silica, that then they have to go out and have testing done for that. It's gonna be part of their silica protocol anyway, so you're gonna have to do all of that. Mr. Mathis, one last.
I had a brother-in-law that worked in a stone crushing plant. He got CPOD, died at the age of 59 from the silica.
Yeah, now, like I said, there are unbelievable standards for silica. For the past 4 or 5 years, all the construction sites, everybody else that deals with silica has to do all kinds of different things to make sure that it's not airborne. It's got to be wet, the way you cut it and all that, that'll all be taken care of as part of the conditions of approval for this one. Anyway, I'm gonna take one more and then we're running late, then we'll continue this till probably November 10th as well. Yes, in the back, sir.
I just wanted to
Name,
talk
please.
about Scott Matheson from Springbrook Farm. I just wanted to talk about the peach orchard on our property that is
right next
on
to
the
it.
upper left-hand corner, pretty close to the, if everyone can see that their irrigation pond right on the other side of the stone wall. I am the caretaker of our peach orchard. I have many concerns of the health and safety impacts around our orchard. Due to the extremely close proximity of the proposed dump, if dust was to exist on our peaches, it would make them inedible, putting us at a financial disadvantage. If excess dust is in the air in close proximity of our orchard, the dust will then land and stick to the outside fuzz, leaving grit as you bite into an early season juicy peach. We plan in the future to host Pick Your Own Peaches, and this dump will directly affect a customer's experience. We ask the board that Springbrook Farms' future will not be put in jeopardy with the downfalls of opening an industrial dump next door. Our farm is home to fertile land, open space, wooded area, and a series of springs and brooks. This land has been protected by our family for over 300 years. Based on good land stewardship, our property on 119 abutting the potential dump area may be home to over 40 endangered animal, plant, and reptile species, as acknowledged by the Department of Natural Resources, right here in the town of Littleton. Our farm is not only a Littleton treasure, but a Massachusetts treasure as well. We are here tonight to help protect our family farm. Our land and waters are not currently polluted, and we ask the board tonight to protect the land known as Springbrook Farm for another 300 years.
Thank you. Okay, continue this till...
So I was wondering if you want to continue till 6:00 p.m. On Thursday, November 10th, to start with this one.
Okay.
With the board's permission, we'll have a draft decision ready for the board to vote that evening with conditions that we discussed this evening. And then the board can decide if you can make the findings on it.
Okay.
And vote at that meeting. Does that work?
That's...
Would we close the hearing now?
I would not suggest to close the hearing now because you were going to provide some additional information, the truck numbers and that.
I guess in my eyes, I would say we could provide those, data on the trucking. I don't know if that's exact anyway. I mean, it's kind of sounds to me like informational purposes. I don't know if I can actually give you an exact count anyway.
And actually, the board does have the ability to close the hearing with the exception of the information that you asked for from the applicant this evening.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is provide you that info for your vote and obviously give you guys a revised plan that shows the access road as a next step. Up to you guys.
It's up to you if you want to close it. prefer to keep it open till the 10th.
Mr. Chairman, I'm afraid that we're going to wind up hearing over and over again some of the same issues.
Well, I don't think so. I think we're gonna get some new stuff. We've heard the
I
neighbors.
have another issue that.
No, ma'am, I'm done for right now. We'll discuss it on the 10th.
Taxpayers paying for road repair for all these
Yeah,
trucks.
thank you, thank you.
To my point.
Well, I don't think we're ready to close it, to be perfectly honest. I think we'll continue it until then. We'll take the last of the information, then we'll work accordingly after that. So the 10th at 6 o'clock, November 10th, is that good? Yep. 10th at, yeah.
Yeah, it's
We'll continue it till November 10th at 6 o'clock.
the board vote to continue.
The board vote, you guys want to vote to continue this till 6 o'clock? Yes? All those in favor? Aye. Yep. 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Geez, I thought we were running.
So can we get a proposed decision at more than the day of?
Can she have an assistant?
Can we talk about that as board business after we're done with? We have an 8 o'clock continued public hearing for 265, 277, 287, 289, and 25 Robinson Road, site plan review, stormwater permit for Northern Bank redevelopment.
I'm stepping down.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you going to sit in the audience
I
with
certainly am.
with your lovely wife?
Yep.
Okay, I'll let you.
Are you coming back?
No, we're done
No,
after
we're done.
this.
Unless you want to run through board business.
Yeah, we do want to run through board business. She'll have to come back for that. Anyway, okay, 8 o'clock. How are you? Good. Do you want to present anything? Do you want to?
I'm sorry, I didn't know you already up.
Oh, yeah, no, we're good.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn, with Rima Bronstein, representing the applicant, the Northern Bank and Trust, in connection with the continued site plan hearing. Appreciate all your time. A few folks here tonight. Jim Vaughn, who's president of the bank, is here tonight, along with Sean Mahoney, who's general counsel. I think you met Sean at the last meeting. Also, we have Sean Malone, our civil engineer, who is here. We also have Dan Barton, our architect with Mogul Design. As you know, Dan wasn't able to be present at the last meeting, so we really didn't have an opportunity to get into the architectural design and elements of the buildings as proposed. So what we thought we would do this evening is really have that discussion where Dan could make a presentation in terms of how he's gone about in terms of design, thoughtfulness in terms of complying with the Village Common district requirements, design guidelines, and all that. So that was really what we wanted to kind of focus on the discussion. I know at the last meeting we had a good opportunity to get into the project overview in terms of what we're talking about. So do we want to connect to the computer? Okay.
Do it like last time.
It's going to take a couple of minutes.
Just 1 minute, Mr. Chair.
Do you folks have luck with laser pointers on these screens?
No.
Okay, I brought two just in case, just to see if it, I didn't think so. A little bit.
Just,
Gotta go green.
let me know how you want to start there, Dan.
Sure. Okay, thanks, John. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Dan Barton from Mogul DeStefano Architects here in Harvard. It's great to be with you this evening. I've seen many of you virtually over the last couple of years, and before that, I got to see you in person and in 3D, but it's nice to be here in person tonight, and I missed being with you on the 6th, so I wanted to thank you all for accommodating a continuation of our application this evening. I get the pleasure of presenting the built vision for this site. You've all seen it before, and I imagine that you've been making your way through the robust application materials that you've got. But what I wanted to do tonight is just kick us off to remind us about the overall vision, the quality of what we've developed for this property, and to just remind everyone that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And with that, Sean's going to cue up a brief little walkthrough up along Great Road for us. Starting with the bank building, we've talked about this as a deconstructed barn. It's really a wonderful, unique, one-of-a-kind building that's positioned on the site to take advantage of the unique geometry of that property. As we continue up Great Road, you see that that building has a number of components that are accessory to the main primary massing. On the back of the building, it does have a drive-through and a rear addition. We have our wide sidewalk heading up along Great Road to what you all know as Building B, which is intended to be a small market and very much in the flavor of an agrarian building, but with a lot of design pops along the way. Substantial outdoor feature being our large gazebo and gathering plaza that's between buildings with doors that access it from hopefully places to eat and grab some food. Building C, which is a 2-story building, which has wonderful bay windows, balconies, overhangs, and connects in a really fun way up to Building D, which is a very simple New England building, modeled after a building that I know and love and that's in the area. And continue on to the last building in our development, which is again a very, very simple agrarian building, 1-story with a rich pattern of windows and siding details and a couple other little pops. But it's great to be able to experience it in 3D like this. The tools that we have nowadays are really wonderful. And you've all been looking at drawings and images that are just on a piece of paper, and it's wonderful to be able to experience it like this. I want to start off by talking about what really matters with form-based code. What matters with the form-based code is relationships. Relationships between buildings and the street, between pedestrians and vehicles, between public and private spaces, and between the sizes and types of parcels and roads and connections of circulation. But as we zoom a little bit more into the details in your form-based code for Littleton's Village Common, it talks about building massing, having discernible primary building massings, but that allow for variation from building to building, from parcel to parcel. It talks about a strong relationship to the street, promoting walkability, welcoming building faces and entrances and spaces. Features that promote the use of the outdoors, that are interactive, that are inviting. Then it brings to the standards for design, materials, fenestration, height, features and components that get added to buildings. Your goals are not to replicate specific buildings or historic elements in town, but to create something that's respectful and complementary to that context. It talks about ornamentation and features that are combined to create an overall consistent and harmonious composition. On each individual building, you've asked for a limit in the palette of colors and materials so that they aren't too busy. And we start with simple building forms, a primary massing, and then we accentuate that massing with other elements and components that increase usefulness of the buildings. Side additions, rear additions, projecting gables, projecting storefronts, dormers, cross gables, bay windows, and balconies. It's wonderful to be here today and to recognize that the design we came up with before the form-based code was even put out actually hit all of these elements. The plan achieves each and every one of the values that I just stated. It exhibits all of the individual features that we just ran through, and it does so in a thoughtful and harmonious and intentional manner. The mission of this project from day one, from the very first day that we got together with Northern Bank and started talking about the property, was to create an exceptional and a unique mixed-use campus. It was to be responsive and respectful to the site conditions, and it was to create timeless forms using appropriate, proven materials. I don't believe it's necessary tonight to walk through in finite detail each one of these buildings, but rather to highlight how the collection of buildings and the design approach all work together to respond appropriately to consistent and harmonious and adhering to the values and guidelines of the form-based codes. What I'd like to do is start tonight with just some high-level features for the entire project, and then we can go and speak briefly about each one of the buildings. Sean, if you could go to the first slide for siding and, I'm sorry, two more, please. There you go. So as we're looking across the entire campus, the idea is to create a richness through variation while also looking at consistency of human scale and form. So we threw together a couple of slides just to remind us, as we're looking at each one of these buildings, the intention is to have variation in elements that all work together. So siding and color is a great place to start, and I think you raised a comment about the color of the buildings. Nothing's been finalized yet, but the intention is to come up with a palette that works in total, one next to the other. We took a stab at that in the 3D images that we've presented, but they haven't been finalized. But what we do know is that we want a combination of rich materials that feel very New England. It could be shiplap siding. It could be board and batten like your library that's right on the other side of the parking lot. It could be a Dutch Cove horizontal siding. It could be like a wonderful barn that's in Concord, a combination of many of those together, but to band the building in a way that really gives it a richness, which is what we were doing with Building E. It could be taking siding and putting on a diagonal in a specific feature. It could be using a little bit of shingles. It could add a small touch with an accent roof that's a different material, like a lead-coated copper. It could be using vertical siding or banding and trim in a way that adds to breaking up siding into different forms. Next slide, please.
Oops. Oops, now I did it. There we go. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Then you go to the next layer, trim and details. The different variations here are endless, but as you're looking at the overall design for this development, there are subtle differences that you may not see when you're looking at some of the graphics that are at a smaller scale, but as we've conceptualized the design, each one of the buildings has its own unique features. It could be shadow boards on corners. It could be the pergolas that sit on top of the balconies of Building C, or the barn doors that we've put on one of the buildings at the end, which is Building E. We'll probably end up playing, when we start to detail these buildings in construction documents, with different trim profiles, different scales, different connections of materials one to the other, and then that brings an overall richness to the entire development. Next slide, please. And then the last being fenestration, doors and windows. Again, as you look at the images that you have in your application package, you'll notice that there are some 2/2 windows, there's some 2/1 windows, there's some 6/6 windows. There's storefronts that are rendered in a dark color, some that are in a light color. The variations, again, are endless, but the intention is to have a combination of all of these, but because the scale is consistent and because it's consistent across each one of the buildings, it all works together as a whole. So as we start to zoom into each one of the buildings, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, and I'm sure you've all looked at them in detail in the packages. There were cross sections that you asked for as part of the application that I didn't include in the presentation because it's really there just to give a sense of vertical scale. But Building A, as we've talked about, is the one section of the site that has a very dramatic geometry. It's the point between Robinson and the Great Road. We took advantage of that. We've talked about this with the planning board when that was the only building that we were applying for site permitting a while back. But the massing of that building is primarily a deep example, although it's set at an angle to the road. It's both has both a short and a long side oriented to the Great Road. It's one story. It's dynamic, and it's a one-of-a-kind building that we've talked about as being somewhat of a deconstructed barn. The building is accentuated by a cupola, intersecting gable, small connector, and a secondary massing, covered porches, a rear addition, and it has compliant fenestration that goes a bit over the 60% that's required. A couple of images of that building. If you could go to Building B then, Sean, please. Building B. The massing is, as in the form-based code, referred to as a wide example. It's comprised of primary massing with a narrow end to the road, and then it has a smaller setback side addition. It's 1.5 stories, and the building is then accentuated with accessory features like shed dormers, front canopy, a side veranda or farmer's porch, cupolas, a dynamic glass storefront, and its fenestration value, when we calculated it across Great Road, came out at 54% of the 60%. We were comfortable leaving that because we felt that the stylistic approach that we took for the building was really solid, that it looked like a barn, and that often barns don't have large expanses of glass. However, we know, because we've looked at it, that if that's a concern, there's an area where we could potentially add an entrance, and then it gets us up to that percentage. But we kept it the way that we had originally designed it. Building C. Building C is also a massing that is set as a wide example, but it has a projecting gable, and it's 2 stories. This building, unlike any of the others on the site, is accentuated with a rear addition, projecting storefronts, cross gables, bay windows, and balconies, all components and features that are talked about in the form-based code. The fenestration value for the building is compliant at 64% on the first floor with a 60% minimum, and 18% on the second floor in the 15 to 20% requirement range. There's been some, I think, some correspondence going back and forth about the bridge that connects buildings C and D. That was an intentional feature. It's a simple glazed bridge that is just 1 story. It is set back, it's a setback connection between 2 primary masses. There's an example of something similar in the form-based code. We felt that this was a really appropriate approach to add something that allowed us to put an elevator in building C and provide accessibility to building D, which is an otherwise fairly small building footprint to have 2 stairs and an elevator. While it could be a solid element below, we felt that it created a wonderful gateway to outdoor activity space. And as you're going by Great Road, you'd be looking right into that outdoor dining area. It speaks to buildings with additions that appear as though they've been accumulated over time, which is also something that's mentioned in the form-based code. And in our design opinion, it represents a dynamic feature that adds visual interest to the building. They're supposed to be contemporary buildings that respect the overall context of the town. That bridge connects up to Building D. Building D is a primary massing that is a narrow example. It has a simple hipped roof, and it's a very relatable building with a very strong rhythm of its fenestration. It's 2 stories, and it's accentuated with projecting storefronts, a side portico, the hip roof, and attic dormers. Its fenestration value is at 61% out of the 60% on the first floor, and 19% from the 15 to 20% range for the second floor. We did not calculate the dormers in the roof of that building because we're anticipating that that's going to be concealed mechanical and storage space. The last building is Building E, the simplest and smallest building on the site in terms of one of the commercial buildings, and it is a narrow example to the road. It is a secondary intersecting side gable. It's 1 story, it has a large porch, and it's accentuated by a front canopy, and again, that side porch, its fenestration value is also compliant. So I'd like to end tonight with a couple of captions from the narrative that we put into the application package that sums up the overall design intent for this development. Each building of Northern Bank's Town Common project has a unique character, which when placed together are complementary, welcoming, and comprising a cohesive overall mixed-use campus. Individual components are designed to a human scale, using appropriate materials to complement the town's residential and historic properties. The overall campus is designed with a New England agrarian sensibility, along with its own unique and dynamic touches. We're really excited that the permitting process for Northern Bank's vision is now underway, and as the design of each one of these buildings is further developed, we look forward to the richness of that vision being fully realized. I'm more than happy to run through the video again if anyone would like to see it, to answer any specific questions. But as we're starting to put together notes for tonight, I realized as I was going through each one of the forms that we filled out, all that technical information is already before you, but happy to answer any questions about it.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Board have any questions or concerns? Anna?
Yeah, so thank you for being here to present all that information. So with that particular building in mind, which of the trees that currently exist are going to stay?
That's a great question that I would refer back to the landscape architect and the landscape plan.
Well, yeah, the landscape architect is not here tonight, but I think, Sean, would you be able to speak to that, I think, in terms of...
For over by the bank building, yeah, the trees that'll be able to remain, there's 3 or 4 up towards the point, up in this area, that'll stay.
Do you want my pointer, Sean?
I think
No, we can see the cursor.
Okay, the cursor.
Thank you. And this tree here is an existing tree to remain. But anything inboard of that would have to be removed.
Anything what?
Inboard of the site. Away from Robinson Road into the site would be removed.
And so with the various fenestrations and heights that you were talking about, that building in particular doesn't meet the requirements of form-based code. So that's something that, along with some of the fenestrations in Building B as well, and the setback in Building D, those are some of the initial things that I saw. But I'm actually requesting that, based off the presentation, that we do actually have UTIL as a peer review group for this particular site. One of the things that I heard you say early on was reiterating the placemaking that is supposed to go on, and even if you can go back to Building E, I think it would be helpful to illustrate what I'm looking for.
This plan here?
Toward the beginning, yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, I guess. So the building that I'm talking about is E, which is on the bottom. And it says coffee shop, and I believe that you all intend it to be a coffee shop. But there's no seating out front. I mean, that's sort of one of the hallmarks of a coffee shop is, you know, you want people to be able to grab their cup of coffee, go sit outside, watch the world go by. And we've mentioned it before, and that's not something that you all are making available. And I believe my colleague the last time mentioned that if that is a coffee shop, you know, you've got no place to go necessarily unless you move 2 buildings over to the open space area. And it just makes it feel very uninviting. I know you all want to make this inviting, it just doesn't feel inviting.
So that's something that can certainly be discussed further. However, we moved Building E forward to comply with the form-based code relative to building setback in the frontage zone. We had originally, if you remember the original 3D renderings that were prepared for the site, had a large plaza in the front. We moved it off to the side because it was immediately adjacent to the entrance, and we didn't feel as though we had the adequate amount of space within that frontage zone to the sidewalk to make for a comfortable seating area. So it's a give and a take. We can go back to looking at the placement of that building to provide that space outdoors, but then we don't comply with that setback.
And, you know, I think part of the intent here is to have, you know, all of these buildings kind of function as a whole to some degree too, so that, I mean, there is an ample seating area that you can see, that you want to just, right there, adjacent to the coffee shop, but, you know, then there's a much larger one that's going to be between buildings C and D, as well as the gazebo area element there that is going to be between buildings B and C, so.
That's correct, and I did fail to mention one thing, Ann, in response to the question. There's also some grading that needs to take place because of the topography in front of Building E that complicated that. So that's why originally when it was set back, we'd have that plaza. That grading is not as much a problem when we come down to Building D, and we were able to get it leveled off. So there are a number of factors that are all working together.
So switch some of the buildings around so that the area where people can congregate is actually near the coffee shop. I mean...
That's seating up behind the, right there, right? That's seating.
That's correct. Yeah, it was an outdoor
That's an outdoor area
plaza
right there.
landscape.
So the difference really is whether you wanted the seating to look at the street or you want it off to the side.
What I want is it to be public.
I would say that's public. What's not public about that seating right there? You go get a cup of coffee, you go outside and sit outside there.
Well, so that's just it. You have to go in, you have to get a cup of coffee, so that makes it a private patio, not a public patio. Something that was brought up at the last meeting, that the only public space is on the other side of Building C. Everything else is private space.
Well, you can walk over with a cup of coffee and sit down there. I mean,
I consider all of it public space.
Yeah.
It's all part of the overall campus. You have multiple opportunities for gathering, sitting down, dining.
So I broached that particular example because I really want to emphasize how important it is that we get the following of form-based code right. This is the very first project that our town is going to be using this particular type of zoning, and we want to get it right. And so...
What do you, sorry.
Go ahead.
What do you anticipate going in these buildings, here and here, B and C?
Building B being a market that would have food available. Sandwiches, very much like the Concord Market, if any of you have been there. When you get to Building C, we were assuming that there was retail or commercial component on the first floor and could be one or multiple tenants with professional office space up above. Building D was anticipated to be a restaurant with an outdoor dining area and a continuation of, offices or professional offices up above, and E is a coffee shop. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be a fairly simple switch to flip the patio of E and the intersecting gable and bring the patio to that corner and potentially not have to deal with the grading. So I think that's a pretty simple response.
I would like that better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my second example is going to be the bridge. So again, I would love for UTL to be able to provide their opinion on that. I don't know where you've seen a bridge around here, but I don't think that that's very New Englandy. It is one of the factors that is in your own language about this, being a New England setting, so that's just...
I would liken it to any porte cochere that's around any house in Concord, Carlisle.
I personally like it.
Yeah, I think it's a unique fun feature that creates a gateway.
It's like an arch.
So, again, I just want to make sure that what the residents of the town voted upon was on the form-based code zoning is what we're going to be seeing, and not a rendition of that based off what somebody believes it to be. And so, given the fact that our planning board, and I'm speaking directly to our planning board members here, is we know that there are a lot of points within the form-based code. And I know that I've gone through the training, Maren has gone through it, I believe Bartlett has. I don't know about Delisa and Mark.
Nope.
But, So from that standpoint, we've used the experts in the past, and I firmly believe that we need to use them again for this. So I respectfully request that we ask for a peer review on the zoning piece.
Do you have any other concerns about that before I address
I have
that?
other types of questions.
Okay.
So I did send my questions to Maren. I don't know if they were sent on to the applicant. Okay. So can we go through those questions?
Yeah, Myron was kind enough to send your questions, which I think were from last week. First one was about, please confirm the colors of the building. Will they be the same colors as depicted? I think Dan spoke to that, that
Right.
these aren't set in stone, and we certainly understand what the requirements are, that, you know, you can't, 3 or less colors per building, and I think he spoke to the kind of the palettes and the textures that he's talking about doing there. So, other comment was about rainwater gardens and whether we're providing them, or if not, why. So, Sean, do you want to?
Yes, so we did consider that. One of the problems with this site is very high groundwater, so there's really limited areas. Ideally, these areas in the back here would be able to be used, but they don't meet the DEP requirements to put a bioretention basin in there because of the depth of seasonal high groundwater. These areas in the front of the building, you may be able to catch a little bit, but our thought was it was a better site design to have that more lawn landscape. Somebody could sit out there on the grass rather than making it a bioretention basin that gets kind of weedy and that kind of thing. So that was our thought process and analysis with using rain gardens.
I think you also asked about what remediation will take place when removing the old gas tanks at the former gas station. They've actually been removed, so that has all been done in compliance with DEP requirements, and there's no issues there in terms of any problems that are lingering. So you asked about providing charging stations for electric cars. Are we providing any? We're not showing any on the plan. That doesn't mean that we're adverse to potentially having them in the future, but it's not something that we are proposing at this time. I think just not something that we've kind of factored in. But you know, I certainly am aware for other settings where they've been done before. You know, like large mall complexes where certainly there've been maybe a row of electric charging stations that have been put in, but we haven't really come to any conclusion on that for this site. So not saying we're averse to it in the future, but we're not proposing it at this time. The lighting, I think there was a question, did you show us the lighting on the plans? I think we
skipped to a question.
Oh, I skipped. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right, I did. Timing with the sewer, what does the build time look like? So I think, Sean, my understanding is that we're talking about a year away from when the sewer would be up and operational.
Yeah.
So the plan would be to have our construction synchronized and scheduled so that it would be contemporaneous, or as much as possible, with when the sewer would be up and operational. Lighting on the plan, we did show general site lighting on the civil plans, but again, I'm going to turn it over to Sean to speak to that. I know we talked about that as well since the last meeting.
Yes, so we did show some general locations, as Mark just said, but Dan and Beth, our landscape architect, and I got together earlier this week. We're preparing some cut sheets to be able to then move forward with a vendor to get a photometrics plan. So long story short, that's forthcoming soon.
The other question was cross-cut plans are supposed to be submitted?
I saw those.
Okay. What are you planning for signage? Dan, I'll let you tackle this one, but you know, I think that we certainly had references on the plans to sample sign locations and, you know, where those might be for the different buildings, and then perhaps there might be 1 or 2 signs on Great Road itself that as well as some wayfinding signage and things of that nature.
Correct, and that really is the crux of it, Mark. You know, we wanted to make sure that this is an appropriate, cohesive signage program across the site. Until we gather all the players and start designing and finalizing the buildings, we won't put that together. But there are some references to the quality that we would want. Nothing internally lit. Things would be lit from above with goosenecks on buildings. We're anticipating that there's one sign that marks the whole development, and also we see that there's an opportunity for some decorative or artistic signage, whether it's sculptural or in a pavement, but that really has not been fleshed out yet.
No neon signs.
No neon signs.
I think they'd be either externally lit or backlit.
They'd be externally lit or backlit. They would be, full cut off, dark sky compliant, and what we would do nowadays anyways. And then we're assuming that there would be some directional and wayfinding that's associated with the site.
And then lastly, the chair, Ann, I know you had asked about the stormwater plan was not checked for tree box filters. I'd like to see those along Great Road, trees, protect them from gas fumes and dirt. Actually, we did review that with the landscape architect, and I think the conclusion was that there's ample, I mean, we're providing significant trees along Great Road, but we're not proposing any tree wells. Is that right, Sean?
That's right. We're not proposing any tree wells within the sidewalk. As Mark just mentioned, we're providing ample landscape area throughout the site along Great Road, and we felt, and Beth felt, that adding tree boxes and tree wells in this sidewalk would just kind of add clutter and kind of close in that wide sidewalk that we wanted.
Even though it's protecting the trees?
Right.
From all the debris, because there's so much, traffic that goes by during the wintertime with all the salts and everything else.
Right, that's why we're not proposing any of the trees in the sidewalk.
Okay, but I mean, they're still right along the side and the sidewalks when the snow gets cleared, and so, okay. Well, it is definitely something that I would like to see, so. Mark?
Anything else, or you?
Not at this time.
Okay, so the issue of peer review, okay. Anna has requested that Luke Util do peer review on this. I just want to see what the rest of the board thinks about it.
I think it's a good idea, because this is the very first project we've done. I'm not into spending money unnecessarily, but I definitely see value in having Util take a look at it. But I still like that bridge.
How about we see what they say?
Yeah. Well, again, it's just a review. Doesn't mean we have to.
No, I agree with Billy, so it's a good idea to have another set of eyes look at it and comment on it.
Go ahead.
Am I allowed to comment? Is there a more important set of eyes than your 4 sets of eyes that are looking at this in terms of what you feel the vision should be for what this is to look like? I mean, I know Dan has spent a lot of time and effort looking through the code, coming up with designs that, we feel achieve certainly fully the vision and the intent and the design guidelines. I mean, I've just kind of at a loss as to what that would. I mean, if there's feedback that you want to provide in terms of moving the outdoor seating area for Building E, from one location to another, because you feel like that might accomplish something more. I can see that, but I prefer to get your input in terms of the things that you think that we might be able to tweak here or there. So that's all.
I have to echo what you said. This is our bylaw. We wrote it. We should know it. We should be able to see if it works. I have no problem if you want to have Util take a quick blush at it, but I don't think they should be going over all the details. I think it's up to us to decide whether or not this is home-based.
I like it, I think you guys have done a great job, but I think, if you've looked at the form-based code, it's very detailed. And
but we're supposed to be the experts. Okay? That's why I wrote the bylaw.
No,
We stood up at town meeting.
I am not an expert on form-based code.
No, Mr. Chair, one of the things that I really want to make clear to everyone is we do this for every single application that goes through peer review. It just so happens that form-based code happens to be the bylaw right now for the village common.
I get
so
that.
if there is an application that comes through for a building, we'll say, that's really large and it goes to peer review, the peer reviewers look at the zoning bylaw.
No, they look at, we send out our peer review for drainage, things like that, stuff that we're not experts on. We're supposed to be experts on. I totally agree with you. We're going to probably put it to peer review. Can I voice my opposition to it and say that I think we should, we spent 2 years putting form-based code in play. We should know what we're talking about. We convinced everybody at town meeting to vote on it. We should have a pretty good handle on it. If you want to send it out because you're questioning whether the bridge is good or whether there's adequate seating on the street, send it out to peer review. If that's what it'll take to keep you happy. But in all honesty, we should know it ourselves. But
thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, I would agree, and I believe that training might have even been recorded. So you all can.
All right, great. So how about if we have them take a cursory look at it, if they have any questions, go back and forth with the architect so that this isn't a protracted peer review, that they look at the aesthetics of it and make sure that it's adhering to form-based coding. How's that?
But again, by looking at form-based code, they're going to be looking at the actual bylaw.
Okay, have them take a look. Let's just not get, whatever, let's have them take a look at it. Okay. Anyone else on the board have any questions or concerns? I just have one. You did a fantastic job going up the street and showing us what it was going to look like in virtual reality. I know there's a lot of residents who are concerned of what Robinson Road is going to look like. If it isn't, I know I'm spending a lot of your money on form-based code and everything else, but could you give us a little rendition of what mitigations, we talked about specific fence, we talked about plantings and everything else. If you could go up Robinson Road so everybody could see what it's going to look like when it's done, I think it would waylay a lot of the fears that the residents on Robinson Road, we've gotten a lot of questions and asks of what's going on out there. If you could do that, what you did in the front was fantastic. If you could do that going up Robinson Road, showing them once the house is down, what kind of the stuff we talked about when we did the sidewalk. I think everyone was comfortable with what you proposed. So if we could see it, that would help out a lot.
Yeah, and just to remind you and the board on that, I mean, I think you see one element
I was going
up
to
at the bottom, right?
just point that out. So Mark, it's fairly easy for us to do that walkthrough for anything that we've built three-dimensionally.
Yeah.
We haven't built all the context of everything around the site. So this rendering here, in fact, was specifically done to make sure that the Robinson Road residents knew that we followed through on what we said we were going to do. There's a berm, there's 2 layers of landscaping, and there's a fence. And in fact, it looks like the fence curves there, but it's not. It's just that it's going up on the berm. So the height of the fence changes as it gets up on top of the berm. So there's a very robust buffer along that entire edge, and we can certainly show a couple of images. If it's worth doing a quick walkthrough like the other video we did, we can certainly do it, as long as I've got enough context that's built to show it.
Just I think it's the further end where when the house comes down, what the final, how the fence is going to look. You're going to maintain the outside of it to make sure that it's pristine back there like you had spoken about. So yeah, just that kind of stuff I think would waylay the fears of the residents up there.
Right.
Sure. Anyone else? Anything else? Nope. Anyone in the audience? Anyone have any questions? Really? 3 for 3, George?
3 for 3, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. I'm going to start with you, George. You know, we should limit how many times you can talk. No, that would be limiting your free speech. Go ahead.
You don't want to.
I know I don't want to do that.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, I come here tonight as a citizen, first and foremost. And secondly, I've been on the Disability Commission
a little over 20 years, and there was only one person left on it, and it was me for several years. I come here tonight to tell this board, as a matter of record, that I want this board to understand that the Commission on Disability is a commission that the United States Congress passed the act for the American Disability Act. And the President of the United States signed it. And all states, cities, and towns must ensure that individuals that are with disability have the same rights of normally being able to move and get about as a person without disability. And the Littleton Disability Commission plays a very key role in ensuring that applicants and developers that come to the town of Littleton, that bills must be in compliance with the ADA. Just like you ask that the applicant go to the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, just like you ask them to go to the Shade Tree Committee, we want you to also say you need to go to the Disability Commission, because the Disability Commission needs to understand and ensure that the developer or the applicant complies fully with the ADA. We're not going to ask anything over what the ADA called for. We right now have the point up there, and we have the sentiment up there that it is not in compliance with the ADA. And when a cease and desist order was issued, the contractor kept billing the building. The COD, Commission on Disability, went to the state and told the state because the aisles are not wide enough for wheelchairs. And it doesn't have the turning radius that needs to be there. So we told the state that don't put us in part of a lawsuit if a fire or something happens to somebody up there that's with a handicapped chair. So we take it serious on the Commission of Disability that we're just as vital as any other commission in this town of boards and committees. Conservation. Everybody seems to go here, do this, do that, but somehow the Disability Commission get overlooked. We must stop overlooking the Disability Commission. I request that any applicant herewith that you give a permit for to develop should have been before the Commission on Disability so that we understand and they understand what they're going to do. Last time I was here, I didn't know exactly, but with the number of the 158 parking spaces, we need to know how that's lined up. He got 6 buildings there because there are certain criteria for the buildings, but according to the number that they're going to put parking space in there, they're required to give us 5 standard handicap spots because I had managed, well, I didn't know 3, maybe want to kick a couple more in, but we also get 1 van. So there's a total of 6 handicap parking spaces that will go into this development. And we want to understand where they're going to go, what's going to happen. We're not going to get into the internal about the height of the toilet, but that is all part of the sink and so forth and so on. 60% of the building has to be accessible to handicap. But we need to start doing what is required, and I am asking this board to ensure that when you have an applicant or developer come in, make sure before we issue a permit, because I want this as part of the record, for them to come by the Disability Commission. We are there to help them. We're not there to ask them to do anything more than what they're are supposed to do according to the ADA. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the Commission on Disability. This is George Sanders telling you, as a citizen, first and foremost, if I was on there or not on there, I am saying we need to make sure that the citizen and the people that come and that will partake into this plaza have the ability to do what they're supposed to be able to do, is to have accessibility and get around. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I will say that every building that's built in the town of Littleton has to go through the building commissioner to make sure they're all ADA compliant. And if you have a complaint with the cinema, you should file it with the building commissioner, and that's his job to look into it. Every single thing that he looks at, he has to, correct me if I'm wrong, he has to make sure that they're all ADA compliant.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but this is already a done deal. They did. Roland, who was the building commissioner, went to the state.
Okay.
But the contractor and the owner up there, they continued to build. And we went to the state, and the state gave them a waiver. So that's why I said that.
I understand, but everything, these plans will all be reviewed by the building department to make sure that everything's ADA compliant.
But we want them to come before before the Commission on Disability. That's what we are there for. Just like every other committee. The shade tree, the bike, conservation, we're no different. We're just as valid as anybody else. And I will pursue to ensure that we do that, because I've already notified the select board with regards to this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, and if I could add, after I heard Mr. Sanders' question about that earlier this week, Green International did confirm that they include the AAB review, Architectural Access Board review, in their site plan review, in their peer review process.
Okay. Can we make sure that moving forward that their review is sent to the Disability Board to make sure if they have any questions that it can be?
I'll do like I always do. I'll post the peer review to the website. I can't promise to send it to any more boards or committees because it's impossible. The process is we reach out to whatever boards and committees have an interest in the process. I try to keep the website updated, but we're just not staffed to reach out to each and every one. I certainly appreciate the question.
Well, if it's just sending an email to them to say that
the new one is, the peer review is up and it's available.
Yes,
certainly.
We'll send it to the Disability Board. We'll make sure that your board is made aware that peer review has looked at the disability issues here and they see no problem, and forward that to you.
That's not what I'm requesting, Mr. Chairman. Let me just explain. Why do they have to go to the bike committee? Why do they have to go to shade?
They don't have to. They don't have to. They don't go to the shade tree committee.
Why conservation? So all these boards that you're
state law says they have to go to conservation. State law, drainage and stuff like that. So we have a peer review that takes care of everything else. They look at it. They look at, make sure it's accessible, handicapped accessible. That will be done, and we'll make sure that moving forward that your committee gets a copy. And if you have any questions, then you can ask Green to take a look at whatever issues you.
That's not the way it was done in this town in the past until Mr. Mullen was appointed, which Diane Curry was the ADA officer for the town of Littleton. We got an issue in this town with the ADA officer, and I've already brought it to the point to the select board about that. Because what was done wrong. And we've had previous, and I'll finish here shortly, Mr. Chairman, we've had previous people come before the committee. The library came before the COD committee. There is no reason on God's earth, if any committee they should be going before, should be the COD. Because the COD is put in by Congress.
Okay. Thank you, George. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Rich Carter, 28 Robinson Road. Just have a couple of questions. So first of all, thank you so much for, that was going to be exactly my question, was to ask for the rendering to go down Robinson Road. I think the team here was so excited to show us that front and wanted to show it a second time, seeing how that we have, lost a substantial amount of residential space on our side. It would be really, really beneficial to see that in live. So if you could make that happen in one of the upcoming meetings, I think that would be extremely helpful. So thanks for all the work that you've been doing. I know there's been a lot of walkthroughs that have occurred, a lot of inputs, but what's always questioning when we get to this state is all that input, and a lot of head nodding, but really what goes into the plan, right? So with regards to the berm, with regards to the setback, with regards to the fencing, and the actual type of trees that were planted, that's something I think the residents would really like to understand in detail. As much as you're showing us the front side of Great Road, we are going up and down that multiple times a day, and that's really an important thing. I live on 28 Robinson Road. The Swartz are in front of my property. There is a large drain pipe that goes underneath Robinson Road that connects into the Whitney's property. So as all this construction occurs, we have substantial, during rainfall, water that goes through that, and we'd like to understand what you're doing to make sure that that continues for the next 30 years and beyond. So if you could, address that during your build process, that would be wonderful. I think it would be extremely helpful from myself, and speaking maybe for the residents, that you go above and beyond protecting us from light and noise. That would be really, really, really appreciated. So there may be some base level of lighting that occurs, but if you can really think of that you're impacting, a dozen homes right behind you, that would be really helpful. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, ma'am.
Laura Yates, 22 Robinson Road. I echo everything that Rich just said. Rich is one of our neighbors. To put a little context, I am 25 feet. My property is 25 feet away. So that we will be very much impacted by the landscape and the lighting. We would appreciate anything you can do. We've seen in the past, we've seen a slide in your deck that demonstrated the 40-foot setback, the rebuilding of the stone wall, the trees. Great, on board. But my question is there anything the planning board can do to ensure that that actually happens and is maintained as best as possible? So that's my request, is what if we can ensure that it actually happens like we're being promised. And if there's a way, I understand that the landscape architect could not be here tonight. If there was a way to show her, I think you used the pronoun she earlier, to show her some of the trees that are there that would take decades to replace. I understand in the parking lot area that's not realistic, but there's some trees where you're going to tear down 25 Robinson Road that are very large, and especially with the water runoff, the storm water, I think it would be really nice to have those big trees there. So my request, more than anything, is what can we do to ensure that it actually happens on Robinson Road? Thank you.
We can obviously condition the approval of it that.
What's that?
We can condition the approval that the landscape plan, which that's where that will be done in accordance with the plan that's given to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last, anyone else?
I just had one other statement. I was specific about the trees. We'd like to know what trees are planted. If you look at all of the plantings throughout Robinson Road, they're white pine, right? So you plant a arborvitae that's going to grow 8 to 10 feet, and it's going to die in 6 or 7 years, or be impacted by, an ice storm. Then there's a constant replanting. So when we were talking and doing the walkthroughs about having a berm and potentially additional white pines, which are going to grow 30, 50 years, and they're going to offer additional screening, maybe not for my lifetime, but maybe for the next residence that's at my house. I'd like that considered for the actual tree planting. Something that's going to mature, be large, and screen.
All right, well, it's, go ahead, Mark.
Mark Rambacher, I just had a few comments on the plan. I think it would be nice if the patio between C and D actually came towards the front as well, because I agree with Anna that it feels much more private. If you could pave it through, that would be good. I am also, I'll say, just a little disappointed in, I like the look of the buildings, but it doesn't contain a residential component, which is kind of also what form-based code was sold to us as, is retail on the bottom and residential on the top. And I don't see where we're getting that in this plan. We're just getting more commercial and retail, and we're missing the residential piece that was kind of sold to us as what form-based code was, so.
I've tried, believe me, I've tried.
We're gonna get a lot of it at the IBM site.
I know, that's kind of why
It's
it
still
was.
half a mile, quarter mile, it's still not in the same area. It's,
Continue this till the 10th. Now, what? Yeah, I'll let you, because I know
Can
you'll
I go
send me.
from here?
Sure.
Okay, so I just want to confirm.
Name, please, for Myron.
Oh, Sandy Schwartz, Robinson Road.
If I don't let you speak, you'll send me an email, so
I
I'll
just
let you
want
speak.
to confirm that the fencing and the buffering trees are going to be right next to the parking lot? It was pushed back, right? It was
Yep.
pushed back?
That's why I
Okay,
want.
and the other thing I wanted to ask, when we met with you on Robinson Road, when we met with the planning board, several of the residents brought up concerns of possible small development in the open space, and it was stated that a condition could be placed on the frontage from Robinson Road as a not able to develop zone. So we're asking for a 20-foot buffer to benefit that proposal.
Remember, we talked about making sure that you weren't going to put any other structures out in the back. You have no intention of it, correct? No.
There's nothing planned in the back. I mean, I think you can see that, you know, that area is needed for the parking and the detention area that we have in the back, so.
So is that a yes?
Yeah, they said yes. Mr. Cataldo,
Hello?
very quickly, Mr. Cataldo.
Joe Cataldo, 41 Robinson Road. Can I address the engineer?
Go ahead.
Could you communicate to the landscape architect, there is a little leaf linden to the right-hand side of the driveway on 25 Robinson that I think would be most beneficial for that to be saved?
Is that the really big one, like 48 inch
I think
or
that would
something?
be
Yeah, okay.
huge to save that. The other thing is, Mr. Chairman, if I could for a minute, just to deviate, I think in speaking for all the neighbors, if you could make the width of the planting bed on Robinson Road as wide as humanly possible to create a berm, to get 3 or 4 feet of elevation. Maybe there's the ability to build a stone wall on the inside of Robinson Road, and then the berm takes over from that and elevates. I think that might make a lot of people feel good, and it would give you an advance of gaining some height to begin with, and then do the planting on top of that.
So, Joe, are you suggesting using like 2 feet of the stone walls, like retaining wall, and then going from there?
Well, if you
rather than
if you look
freestanding?
at Robinson Road, and you'll do it when you do your simulated video, I hope, if you were to build a farmer's wall,
Yeah,
2 to 3 feet tall,
yeah.
and then, you know, that's set back off the roadway 4 or 5 feet, and then you pick up behind that with the berm.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna give a lot of bang for what everybody's gonna look at.
Yeah, get another foot or two of berm out of it.
Right,
Yeah.
and get some more elevation. I think it will tie everything together. The last thing, nothing to do with the development, but a lot to do with what we deal with on Robinson Road. The drainage on Robinson Road is very flat. It goes out, up behind this property, it goes out. So the 2 points are right behind 25 Robinson Road. There's a low spot right there. Actually, where the triangle is on your property right now, I'm wondering if you're planning on making that somewhat of a detention basin, so that some of the water from Robinson, right at that point of the driveway where you live, that's one spot where the water the roadway is very flat with virtually no drainage in it. So that's a puddle right there. I'm just wondering if there might be a manner in which you can help to take some of that water off of Robinson into a drainage basin. I know you have high water table. We all know that.
Well, one of the other issues is this is actually jurisdictional ILSF.
Okay.
So we're in front of the Conservation Commission, so we're a little restricted. We can't really add water to it. So we're a little tied on what we can do with that area right now. We're trying to preserve and prevent that water level from increasing with this development.
Okay. Just a thought, and not to be criticizing, I love the plan. I think the idea of the patio on Building E where it is, I don't think I'd want to sit on Great Road drinking a cup of coffee at 7:30 in the morning, but I think it's a great plan, looks great. We really would look forward to seeing the virtual driving up Robinson Road. I think that would be huge for all of us.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nope, I gave you one. Nope. No, he can't raise his hand to get the second one. Two separate, quickly, please. We'd like to get home before it's Wednesday.
Yeah, Steve Swartz, 30 Robinson Road. Just to make sure, last meeting, Mr. Chairman had asked that you move the fence along the parking lot for the whole length of the parking lot, and we know that there's potential for fumes and things along those lines, so we kind of like the fence to be 8 feet instead of a standard 6 foot, if that's at all possible, with the finished side obviously facing Robinson Road. But I'm just trying to think if there was anything else.
I'm not allowed to talk.
I think that was basically it, and I echo what Richard said about the light pollution and things along those lines.
Thank you. Very quickly.
Yeah, both mine's quick. So Mike Flanagan, 26 Robinson Road. We talked about structures down the back of the parking lot. So I don't see where, dumpsters and where trucks that deliver stuff in the morning, where they go. And I'd like to see that added, right? That's going to be almost like a permanent structure. I would think you'd put fencing around a dumpster spot. Is that supposed to be in the back? Is it on the side?
It's right up there in the back corner.
Yeah, we talked about this with the board the last meeting, but we have a dumpster recycling area here, which would be an enclosure as you described, a second one here, and then a third up here.
Okay, so is that, is there going to be maintenance sheds, anything else, or how do you restrict how big that space gets with all the stuff that goes into like maintaining a big property? Is there?
You're going to fence it, right?
Yes.
It's going to be about the size of a dumpster with a fence tight against it.
Just a couple parking spots.
What about? No, never mind. I won't. No, never mind.
4 businesses and 2 dumpsters.
Anyway, all right. So we're going to continue this till November.
Well, I would suggest we continue to November 10th and put this at the end of the meeting at 8:15. That way, if we're not ready for a full discussion that evening, it'll depend on your turnaround and how the peer review gets started. So we could have that option to have it then, or continue to the, and at that time, you could continue to the following if you're not
Is that
ready.
good?
Sure, it's your next meeting, November 10th?
Yeah.
Thursday the 10th?
Yeah, Thursday the 10th, so that's like 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from Thursday.
Mr. Chair, can I elaborate on one previous comment?
Very quickly.
Okay. So, I hear what you say about the peer reviews. I pulled up the one from Monarch Drive and 242 King Street, peer reviews. Each of them have sections for the zoning bylaws. So, in asking for form-based code to be reviewed, the way that Green International requested it, because we have a proposal, I request that we have that proposal for Util is the one that gets submitted, and they use that for the peer review. Because it's being consistent. We ask for zoning bylaws, and the other ones, we should ask for it here too.
I guess everybody's agreed that we want
Didn't
to.
we already decide that?
We already decided that.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't know that we had decided that the proposal that Maren shared with us is the one that we're going to be asking for. That's all. Thank you.
That's my hope that we.
Okay, all right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so 8:15? Great.
On Thursday, November 10th.
Thursday, November 10th. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm back, Jeff. You can't leave, Jeff. Say goodbye to your wife. Do you have any bills?
Let's make this quick. I'm exhausted.
I know, I just want to get through this quick. All right, go ahead, sign them. Minutes, do we have minutes?
Giving them hints.
The board members had asked about the meeting on the December meeting.
I just want to go over this proposal with you in some more detail.
When in December? Oh.
Bartlett.
Bartlett.
Okay.
Can we get out of here before it's Wednesday?
Yeah. So I put planning board meeting schedule for December down for discussion. Let's see, so the bike and pedestrian plan consultants at MAPC will be prepared to give us a presentation on December 1st. And the issue is if we do that fully remote, then they won't have to travel to us. So we could just have a remote meeting.
Okay.
And then I don't remember who told me they might not be available on December 1st, so we should push the meeting to December 8th. Am I misremembering, or?
So I have a work conflict on both the 1st and the 8th. We have some annual planning that we do on those days, so I will likely miss part of the meeting no matter when it is. But I will say that if it's virtual, then I will miss less of it.
Okay. So do you want to move to, well,
Do you want to leave it at the, well, what time do you think you'll be there for the 8th?
Well, so my meeting is 6:30 to 8 on the 1st and the 8th. We could do it the 7th if you guys are willing to move it, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I don't care. 'Tis the season by then, sure.
So the 7th, I'm just not sure. I checked with MAPC about both the 1st and the 8th. So if they're not available on the 7th, I'll just keep them on the 1st with fully remote.
We'll do the 1st virtual. They don't have to come. If Anna can jump into it, that's great. If not, we can handle that one.
Right, we'll just leave it for that presentation and discussion on the, yeah, so they'll be doing initial presentation of existing conditions and initial feedback of the survey, which is gone live, but now we'll get to start the public outreach saying
You can
that the
leave.
survey
You don't have
is
to
live.
stay for this. You think we're going to sneak something in? Anyway, all right.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll do that. What about minutes? Anyone have any problems with me?
That there were September 19th minutes were posted.
Anyone?
Yeah, there was actually a mistake, but I don't really care. It's, my company name is Touchmark, not Touchstone.
Yep. Lucia put down
I think
what they
Touchstone
said.
is a better company than not that Touchmark. I think
It's already
Touchstone
taken.
might
It's already
be,
taken.
they might be doing a little better than you.
Just a tad.
All right, other than that, everybody else good with the minutes?
I just had a quick question under 1E. That has nothing, that had to do with our CPC letter, right, about funds, not the hazard mitigation plan, because it uses the word.
Oh, town planner minute today?
No, under 1E of the meeting notes.
Don't have that in front of me.
I'll find it. Sorry.
Oh, we haven't even got there. We're doing minutes, Anna. Well, can you let me finish?
What? I thought you were doing minutes.
I'm doing minutes right now. You're
That's
asking.
what I'm doing. I'm doing minutes.
You just said hazardous
Okay, under
mitigation.
1E of the minutes,
Oh.
it says planning board policy on mitigation funds. But then it talks about mitigation funds blending policy draft. So I'm just wondering if that got mixed up, because isn't that two separate things? Mitigation funds and blending policy, or is it one and the same?
That was just the one document that.
It's one. It's about whenever we get mitigation money, we're gonna put it to the CPC to blend, for a blended, to blend.
So that was
So-
a CPC
Right.
letter?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, then we're good. I move that we approve the minutes of Monday, September 19th.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Planning board schedule, we've done that. Board members update. You talked about and you wanted to discuss on this meeting about moving forward, how we're going to do conditions of approval, right? That's what, one of the things you want to talk about.
Yes, you want to do that now? Okay.
We have to do it now.
Let's do it real quick.
Okay.
Okay? So, the way we always used to do it was Maureen and the council that was involved on the other side, if there was one, drew up conditions of approval, right? Sent it off to town council, and then it came back to us and we discussed it. When we were all done, all set to close the hearing and vote it, that's when we did it, and that's when we should continue to do it, okay? But it should be between their council, town planner, and our town council. That's,
I think the issue was that we weren't getting these conditions until the day of the meeting, or at the meeting.
I agree.
And
We
that's
should-
not right.
Right. We should see them a little bit before, but we should discuss them at the meeting, that's my point.
Okay.
We should all, it
But
should.
we should be able to, yeah, we should discuss them, we should see them
So we
in
discussed them
advance,
in the,
so we can make possible adjustments before the meeting, and then go boom.
Right. At the meeting,
Yeah.
adjust it and then vote it.
Yeah.
Right. That's where we should always
If it
do
was a
it.
timely, but we had a month there where it just wasn't working out.
Right, but we should,
so it's sort of like what we did tonight, right? Where we were listening to.
Yeah, they were put out that we weren't voting on.
Two separate-
You know, but we can't do that until we.
no, but we have to get them, Maren has to get them done. We get a look at them, but we don't go back and forth a million times with them. If we have an issue with it, we discuss it when we close it, and when we vote the conditions, we change it right then and there, and we're done with it. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
Okay, what you just said,
It's not what we were talking
it's not what we were talking about, though.
No, I agree that you see them earlier, but we
Yeah.
don't go back and forth 10 times with Maren about it. That's my point.
I see. So we can, well, then we make careful.
Edits when we're here.
Or we make careful motions.
Well, yeah, I think we all have, what you're saying is we all have to be respectful of Maureen's limited time and resources.
That's
So, yeah.
exactly the point. And the other thing is, most of the conditions of approval are what we heard at the meeting. And there used to be boilerplate, 10 things, no sodium de-icing, hours of operation. That's what they should really be. The permit should stand on its own by the plan that's presented and everything else. And if there's issues or if there's changes that we have to do, we do it as part of the conditions of approval. That's where those little subtle nuances get done. And we do it as a board, we all agree to it, we have Maren make the changes, we vote it, and then that's it. It shouldn't be 10 pages of conditions of approval. They should be succinct and agreed upon by everybody involved before we even see them.
Yeah, I agree.
My point.
So, just to repeat what I think I heard, so we meet, we discuss, we may or may not close the meeting, but if it's ready to have a draft decision, then Maren and the team gets a draft decision,
Yep.
and turns it back to us in time to provide thoughtful review,
Mm-hmm.
and then we come back to the meeting, we discuss any other further questions, and then we, again, may or may not decide the final draft, but
No,
we likely will decide the final draft.
that's kind of what I'm
I
thinking.
think
We
by
just-
the time, well, assuming that the hearing's been closed, by that time, we should be able to.
Yeah.
Yes.
We should be close.
I'm curious why you didn't close the Springbrook hearing.
Because we still had stuff that was gonna be coming in. I didn't wanna close it and have to worry about bringing more stuff in. How many tractor trailer loads they are. Maybe we get some sort of, something from the fire department as to how they're going to handle issues out there. We need a few more things to keep the.
Yeah, I wasn't
try
ready to.
To try to keep the
really-
Mathesons at bay because they have the obvious concerns about it. And we wanna, I think we need to do a little bit more homework before we can, not that they're ever gonna be satisfied with it, but
It's a tough one.
It is. You're damned if you do, you know, you want to keep the family farm going. You want to do what you can to help her. If it wasn't composting.
Trees in December and March.
All right,
Anyway,
well.
anything else? What about, no, Maureen's town planner minutes?
So we got the announcement of the funding for the hazard mitigation plan, so FEMA and MEMA funding coming through. So that'll be a 3-year, luckily that'll be a 3-year planning program, so it's not a heavy lift for each of the next 3 years. Next thing to do is the town sign the contract with the state, select board will handle that, and then the town will contract with the consultant. Hazard mitigation plan is, in my experience, is best done by MAPC, which is a simple contracting process, so that will help. And then the bicycle and pedestrian plan survey, MAPC has finished the survey and it's ready to go live. All we have to do is some of the outreach to get it posted to the website and all that.
On that note, the Transportation Advisory Committee is fizzling out. And I don't know what to do. I mean, it's not my responsibility, but the chairman is resigning, people aren't showing up for meetings, no quorum, etc. So, I'm just putting this out there. So if anyone wants to, you know, slap people around to get them to.
Two other things. We've signed a contract with the consultant for train station. When are we going to start getting that involved with that?
Yep, the first meeting is on Wednesday, November 16th. I don't remember what time we start. I think 5 p.m. I'll send you a scheduling email on that. But the request is for planning board members, select board members, finance committee members to sit with the consultants for a policy discussion. It's my understanding a lot of the difficult questions come from not only planning board members, but select board and finance committee members anyway. So let's get those big questions out first, is the approach that the consultant wanted to take. So then after that, then by early December, they'll have a public outreach program ready to float with the board on when public meetings would be.
Okay. One last thing, and then I'll let everybody go. The gun bylaw that we're proposing. We're going to have our first public meeting on the 10th. Probably get a lot of input. We'll get hopefully a closer to a finalized draft of it. It's him. We're going to bring it to town meeting, but I don't think we're going to do a special, well, I guess I want to ask everybody, do we really want to ask for a special town meeting, or do we want to wait until the spring and do it for the spring town meeting?
I think people want a special town meeting.
I don't know.
But I think it's time to think about what the true effect is. It doesn't.
Waiting doesn't matter, because once we post it, then everything's grandfathered, that's when the date starts.
Okay, I
On the
think as long
10th.
as people understand that, yeah.
Right, the 10th is when it starts,
Right.
so.
And so at that point, it becomes a policy decision on the town's preferences when you want to vote.
I would personally rather than make this a big deal and do it at a regular town meeting so that it's just part of business as usual. So we're not having a special town meeting just for this, and we're not gonna have both sides galvanized out there. It's part of our town meeting, it's part of what we do. That's my personal feeling on it. I don't wanna do anything special for this, so.
So I think where I sit on that is it depends on whether or not we will be getting any input from the Attorney General's office once the new Attorney General gets seated.
I don't think, what can the Attorney General tell us? Whether the bylaw is good or not? They haven't even voted the first two, so.
No,
They haven't even, when do these bylaws we've been looking at, when are they going to be approved by the Attorney General?
Right, that's kind of my point.
I mean, when that happens, that will be definitely useful.
So it's not so much for approval, it's more like for any input or comments. That's it.
I don't think you're gonna get the Attorney General to comment on it. I think that's why we haven't heard from the Attorney General now,
Well,
because,
especially a new one. I mean, they're going to be so inundated with something else.
Yeah, the new Attorney General may make an announcement that she is going to enforce or not enforce or rescind or augment whatever things are in place now.
Yes.
So that would.
You're saying it more correctly, yes. So that's the only comment I had about timing and.
So that would be.
I agree with you, but I don't think we're gonna get anything from them. I don't think they're gonna even look at our stuff until, she'll have just taken over or he, or whoever it is, and, yeah.
Right, I don't think anybody will comment on anything we do, but I think there might be sort of a general announcement because this is an issue.
Okay.
But in any case, it's an argument for doing normal business in town, at town meeting in the spring.
Yep. Okay. Have we covered everything, Myron? We're missing anything?
I have one other quick thing, that amendment that we have to do at town meeting to get any takers for volunteers.
Bartlett City was gonna do it.
Bartlett, and from the select board side, Matthew Nordhaus is
All
the
right.
select board that's also assigned to that.
I don't remember volunteering for that.
So the planning board did submit the official report to town meeting to
I would do it, but
town
I would
administrator.
submarine it, so you guys don't want me to do it.
Moderator.
I'll do it if you don't want to do it, Barbara.
No, I'll do it, but I'll have to, I'm gonna.
Well, you can't let anybody submarine it.
Why? It's one time in 30 years we've had an issue. Now all of a sudden we have to write another bylaw just to protect 6 house lots that will never be built in the first place. Anyway, whatever.
Are we done?
We're done.
Let's
Trust me, I am
I
done.
move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I wouldn't submarine it, and I'd let everybody vote it.